1.
Hello, and thank you for joining the April Economic Development and Industrial Corporation of Boston Board meeting. At this time, the Boston Planning and Development Agency is continuing to host public meetings in a virtual setting for the health, safety, and accessibility of Boston residents. For more information and updates, visit bostonplans.org. The Open Public Meeting Law requires that I notify the public this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications, at Xfinity Channel 24, RCN Channel 13, and Verizon Fios Channel 962. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/cable. I will now take a roll call of members. Mr. Monahan.
Present.
Dr. Landsmark.
Present.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
And I, Priscilla Rojas, am present. Okay, let's see. Agenda item number 1. Request authorization for the approval of the minutes of the March 16th, 2023 meeting. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Item number 2. Request authorization to extend the lease agreement with LFA Art Management for the continued use of approximately 150 square feet in Channel 12 Channel Street, Suite 505A in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Maureen.
You're on mute, Maureen.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. LFA Art Management has been a tenant at 12 Channel Street, Suite 505A since 2020. LFA Art provides artistic services to corporate clients throughout New England and nationally, including but not limited to prominent hotel chains, healthcare facilities, corporate offices, and universities. Suite 505A is approximately 150 square feet of office space on the 5th floor. The office has limited improvements, which include laminate flooring and a small air conditioner. On April 16, 2020, the BPDA board approved a 1-year lease agreement with 2 one-year option terms. The lease commenced on May 1st, 2020, and will expire on May 31st, 2023. LFA Art pays $42 per square foot or $525 monthly in fixed rent, which includes the cost of electricity. BPDA staff is proposing a 1-year extension to the lease agreement, commencing on June 1st, 2023, and expiring on May 31st, 2024, with 4 1-year option terms. Fixed rent shall begin at $43 per square foot or $537.50 per month for the first year. Fixed rent will increase annually by $1 per square foot. If all option terms are exercised, BPDA will receive fixed rent in the amount of $33,750 over all the terms and at the cost of electricity. Staff is recommending an amendment to the lease agreement between BPDA and LFA Art for the continued use of Suite 505A at 12 Channel Street. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Great. Item number 3. Request authorization to enter into a license agreement with Harbor Island Equipment LLC for the use of a portion of Dry Dock 4 and Pier 5 located in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Maureen.
Thank you. Harbor Island Equipment, also known as Coastal Marine, is a 100% woman-owned construction company specializing in marine and heavy civil construction, demolition, pile driving, and other marine operations. In August 2021, the BPDA entered into a license agreement with Coastal Marine for the use of waterfront land and berth on Dry Dock 4, Pier 5, for construction laydown and as a means of transporting materials via barge. The term is for 2 years and will expire on August 31st, 2023. Coastal pays $15,000 per month for the use of both land and berth combined. As Coastal Marine continues to work in Boston Harbor, they requested the continued use of Dry Dock 4, Pier 5 for both land and berth beyond August 31st. The recommended term will be for a single 6-month term commencing on September 1st, 2023, and expiring on February 29th, 2024, with 5 6-month option terms for a total of 3 years. Coastal Marine will continue to pay $15,000 monthly through the initial term and the additional option terms. The rate proposed is consistent with the market rate for both industrial land used for commercial laydown and Massachusetts Port Authority tariff approved by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for berthing of vessels in Boston Harbor. During the initial term of the license, BPDA will receive $90,000. For the additional 5 option terms, if exercised, BPDA will receive an additional $450,000. Staff is recommending that the BPDA enter into a license agreement with Harbor Island Equipment for the continued use of a portion of dry dock 4 Pier 5. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 4, request authorization to extend the tentative designation status of the Cronin Group LLC for the long-term lease and redevelopment of 24 Dry Dock Avenue within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. BPDA issued a request for proposals for the redevelopment of 24 Dry Dock in July of 2019. 24 Dry Dock is a vacant 30,000 square foot building located within the boundaries of Boston Ship Repair premises here in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. The RFP required that the development be consistent with the RFL, the Marine Park Master Plan update, and also support maritime development as a condition of the award. Cronin Development was selected as a developer in January of 2020. Subsequently, Cronin Development purchased the Boston Ship Repair Company themselves and now controls the entire leased premises, which is a bonus for this project. Per the RFP, EDIC will be refunding 50% of the rent paid for the 20-foot dry dock portion of the premises, up to $10 million, which will be used towards capital repairs and maintenance of the Boston Ship Repair facility. Cronin will put the $10 million up front into an escrow account for distribution upon lease signing, and it'll be they will be reimbursed over a period of time through appropriate rent credits. The designation has been extended 4 times, the most recent in October of 2022, wherein the designation was extended to April 30th of 2023. Cronin's proposal is to develop a 235,000 square foot building on 6 floors, consisting of maritime space for Boston Ship Repair, a cafe, and general industrial on the first floor, with life science development on the upper 5 floors. Since the last extension, Cronin has made considerable progress toward redesigning the development to the satisfaction of BPDA urban design. Final plans are expected by July of 2023. They've also made significant progress, along with myself and some of my colleagues, towards negotiating the final ground lease. And while working diligently towards securing the Cronin in particular is diligently working towards securing the required financing in this challenging capital environment. BPDA staff will not be recommending final designation until final development plans are submitted, Article 80 process is completed, final lease negotiations, lease is finally negotiated, ready for execution, and building permits are ready for issuance. As previously stated, Cronin has progressed on all of those requirements to BPDA's satisfaction. We see remarkable progress forward. We're very happy with that. Both sides are spending considerable time moving through these challenges. We're requesting permission to extend the tentative designation through October 31st of 2023. I look forward to updating the board in October with an update on the project, which will be considerable.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so do we have any questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Okay, item number 5, request authorization to extend the tentative designation status of Amoresco Incorporated for the air rights lease and development of a solar photovoltaic canopy above the EDIC-owned parking garage in the Raymond Elflin Marine Park. Dennis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you said, the subject property that we're discussing is the 1,700-car garage in the Raymond Elflin Marine Park owned by BPDA. BPDA issued an RFP for the development of a solar canopy on the roof of the garage in March of 2019. Amoresco's proposal was determined to be the most beneficial to the BPDA and the City of Boston's goal toward carbon neutrality. Amoresco intends to install a solar canopy on the roof of the garage. The canopy itself will be elevated over the parking spaces, so we will not be losing any parking spaces on the roof of the garage. The oversimplified business model is that Amoresco would install the solar panels on the roof of the garage. 50% of the electricity generated will be provided to the adjacent neighboring Vertex Pharmaceuticals, which will allow them to meet the LEED Platinum status of their building. Sufficient excess electricity will be generated, which will be delivered through hopefully Eversource, which would go towards lower income households. Amoresco generates enough revenue to justify the upfront expense, and of course BPDA is compensated for the use of its assets for the economic generation. We're asking for additional designation extension to analyze and contemplate a possible restructuring of the business model to account for the now tighter economics. Construction costs have risen exponentially. Eversource has yet to establish the process and how this project, this new program for electricity towards lower income households will be delivered. So they're still working out those details. It's possible that Amoresco may end up doing it themselves if Eversource is not able to finish the program timely. I know they are working on it though. Vertex and Amoresco are also renegotiating the business model between them as a result of all the changing dynamics. And BPDA and Amoresco must revisit the economics of the lease between us and Amoresco as well, all towards reaching the laudable goal with the LEED Platinum and the lower electricity towards lower income households. We're asking to extend the tentative designation as well to October 31st of 2023. During that period, BPDA and Amoresco will negotiate a business model that attempts to accomplish both the City of Boston's carbon neutrality goal and the establishment of the lower income electricity delivery system to Eversource or elsewhere. This is a very complicated transaction with a lot of moving parts that are not all in our control. We believe that the extension will allow smart people, smart and dedicated people to take the time to thoughtfully come up with a recommendation that will creatively accomplish these laudable goals. So we're asking for a little more time to think this through, but we're excited to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
All right, item number 6, request authorization to extend the tentative designation status to 22 Dry Dock LLC, a joint venture between Related Beal, Boston Real Estate Inclusion Fund, and Kavanaugh Advisory Group for the long-term lease and redevelopment of 20 and 22 Dry Dock Avenue within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Natalie.
Madam Chair and members of the board, 20 and 22 Dry Dock Avenue are parcels in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park with 2 to 3 story buildings. For the last several years, 22 Dry Dock has been utilized as an office space for the BPDA and other smaller office tenants. Because the Marine Park has become a highly sought after cluster location for the expansion of Boston's booming life science lab sector, the BPDA issued an RFP for the proposed project site on April 28, 2021 to capture the opportunities offered by the current market. The BPDA's offices will move to the BPDA-owned office building, 12 Channel Street in the Marine Park. The selection committee determined that the proposal submitted by Related Beal, Brief, and Kavanaugh Advisory Group was the most highly advantageous proposal based on their proven track record of successfully completing life science buildings, a competitive price offer, an excellent DEI plan, and a package of community benefits, LEED Platinum and zero net carbon building design, and the project's potential to have a swift impact on Boston's economy via both job training and job creation within this rapidly growing sector. The redevelopment has made significant progress in terms of permitting, pre-construction, and design during the tentative designation period over the last 12 months. Over the tentative designation extension period, the redeveloper intends on completing the Article 80 process, executing cooperation agreements, achieving ZBA variances for accessory parking density, receiving Chapter 91 approval, executing the ground lease, and pulling building permits from ISD. The redeveloper also intends to complete 100% of the construction documents and close on a construction loan. Pending the completion of the remaining permitting and construction preparation items, staff will return to the board for final designation in the next 6 months. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments by the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Lansmore?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, Natalie.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 7. Request authorization to advertise and issue an invitation for bids for elevator rehabilitation at the 12 Channel Street building within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. William.
Thank you and good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the board. As you'll recall and are familiar, the 12 Channel Street building is a 9-story masonry mid-rise originally constructed by the U.S. military in 1941. The building is currently served by 3 passenger elevators, and those elevators are prone to frequent service disruptions and mechanical failures, and we're looking to correct that. We are requesting authorization to issue our invitation for bids, which will rehabilitate all 3 passenger elevators, one at a time, maintaining access to all floors of the building. We have had the rehab package prepared by NV5, our house doctor mechanical engineer. This package will be advertised following Chapter 149 requirements, which governs vertical building construction, and the construction contract would be awarded to the lowest responsible bidder. We expect the work to cost about $1.5 million, and it will be included in the upcoming fiscal year 24 capital budget. I anticipate to return with an award recommendation for our contractor in June of this year. So with that, we are requesting authorization for the clerk to issue this invitation for bids, and I am certainly happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Lansmore?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thanks,
Thank you very
William.
much.
Item number 8, request authorization to advertise and issue an invitation for bids for storm drain cleaning and camera investigation services in the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Laura.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board for the opportunity to speak with you today. To follow on the comments made by my colleague William, the civil infrastructure within the 190 acres of the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park, such as the roadways, water, sewer, and drainage systems, was also originally installed by the military even further back in the 1930s. Therefore, as authorized by this board in June of last year, the first comprehensive assessment of the storm drainage since the 1990s is currently underway. In parallel with their forthcoming recommendations to advance climate resiliency and increase future capacity, this assessment has revealed the need for additional maintenance. Therefore, we're before you today for authorization to solicit bids for storm drain cleaning and camera investigation services in order to clear debris and obstructions from drainage lines, manholes, and catch basins throughout the marine park. The awarded contract term will be for a term of 3 years, and the cost is not expected to exceed $300,000 per year. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmore?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Okay, item number 9, request authorization to advertise and issue a request for qualifications for physical security infrastructure planning at EDIC owned properties. Laura.
Thank you once again, Madam Chair. As the BPDA real estate team ensures excellent fiscal and operational stewardship of our public property, staff are currently implementing a best-in-class security program. Most recently, this board authorized a building security project at 12 Channel Street, and those design services are currently underway. Through this joint RFQ, staff are seeking similar services for additional locations owned by both the EDIC and the BRA. The selected designer will develop bid specifications and drawings, as well as timelines, cost estimates, and they'll also provide construction administration for enterprise video management, access control, and alarm management, as well as associated warranties. The cost is not expected to exceed $100,000, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, Laura. Okay, item number 10. Request authorization to enter into a contract with Plum Logics to provide a Salesforce application for PowerCore BOSS program. Davo.
Thank you, Madam Chair and fellow chair members for taking the time to hear me today. PowerCore BOSS staff working with BPDA, MIS staff prepared a detailed work statement of his needs and sent out solicitations to multiple Salesforce partners. At the time, the estimated cost was anticipated to be under $50,000. Of the responses we received, Plum Logic was the lowest at a price of $78,760, with the highest being a range between $150,000 to $200,000. The funds for this contract are derived from coronavirus, state and local physical recovery funds. As part of the American Rescue Plan Act, PowerCore BOSS is a sub-recipient from the City of Boston's Environment Department. The recipients may use funds for programs, services, or capital expenditures that respond to public health and negative economic impacts of the pandemic. These funds must be obligated by December 31st, 2024, and expended by December 31st, 2026. So PowerCore BOSS has included funding for this expense in our fiscal 23 operating budget. In order to assist the Office of Workforce and Development and PowerCore BOSS with its participant tracking and obligations and improving its ability to meet various reporting requirements for its ARPA funding and funding from AmeriCorps and other grant sources, staff therefore request the board's approval to select Plum Logic as the vendor to provide Salesforce application to allow PowerCore internal staff to record information associated with PowerCore's initiatives. In this application, there will be capabilities of managing information associated with projects, grants, workforce development, tool inventory, community engagement, and participant data management. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 11, we have personnel. Michael.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Jemison. We have a number of items for your consideration on the EDIC agenda with the exact details included in the board memos. We have 3 appointments in the Planning Department: Harshika Bisht, Senior Sustainability Design Reviewer; Sikun Zhang, Planner 2, and Jack Halverson, Planner 2. We have 1 contract amendment, Mark Bemis, Office of Workforce Development. We have 2 internships / co-ops in the Development Review Department, Alexis Rate, and in the Planning Department, Maya Barnes. We also have 1 status change in the Development Review Department, LOIs from full-time to part-time hours. We have 4 out-of-state travel requests, and we have 1 departure in the Real Estate Department, Riley Moran, project engineer and environmental engineer. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. And that was the last item of this agenda, so I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote, Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsberg?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes, meeting adjourned. Okay, so let's get to the next hearing. So thank you for joining the April Boston Redevelopment Authority Board meeting. At this time, the Boston Planning and Development Agency is continuing to host public meetings in a virtual setting for the health, safety, and accessibility of Boston residents. For more information and updates, visit bostonplans.org. The Open Public Meeting Law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications, at Xfinity Channel 24, RCN Channel 13, and Verizon Fios Channel 962. It is also being live streamed at boston.gov/cable. I will now take a roll call of the members. Mr. Monahan.
Present.
Dr. Landsberg.
Present.
Mr. Miller.
Present.
I am present, Priscilla Rojas. Okay, let's start with item number 1. Request authorization for the approval of the minutes of the March 16th, 2023 meeting. A motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan.
Aye.
Mr. Landsberg.
Aye.
Mr. Miller.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Item number 2, request authorization to schedule a public hearing on May 11, 2023 at 5:30 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the application for approval pursuant to Chapter 121A, Section 18C for the 900 Morrissey Boulevard Chapter 121A project and for consent to form an urban development limited partnership for the purpose of the undertaking the 900 Morrissey Boulevard, Chapter 121A project. A motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsberg?
C. Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes C as well. Aye. Motion passes. Okay, item number 3, we have Board of Appeal. Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Before you this afternoon are 45 zoning petitions that have been prepared by planning staff to be transmitted to the Board of Appeal for their April 25th and May 9th hearings. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, do you have any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsberg?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Item number 4, thank you. Request authorization to petition the Boston Zoning Commission to amend the Article 66 Fenway Neighborhood District with respect to plan development area dimensional regulations in the Fenway Triangle Neighborhood Development Area and Brookline Avenue Community Commercial Subdistricts and zoning map 1Q with respect to the boundaries of the Fenway Triangle NDA and North Boylston Neighborhood Shopping 3 subdistricts. Christina.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Secretary, and esteemed members of the board. For purposes of the record, my name is Christina Rico, and I am pleased to join you here in my capacity as the Senior Neighborhood Planner for the Fenway. I'm here tonight to respectfully request your consideration of proposed changes to Article 66. The changes, which focus primarily on PDA eligibility and criteria in the West Fenway area, are designed to balance predictability of built form and intended uses with the flexibility needed to deliver transformational public benefits. Next slide, please. The stated purpose of establishing areas within which planned development areas may be permitted is to provide for a more flexible zoning law, to enable integrated and well-designed development of projects of a more significant scope, to provide public benefits to the Fenway community, and to encourage economic development within the Fenway neighborhood district. The limits of where PDAs could be located in West Fenway and the limits of their flexibility were shaped by a public process initiated in 1999 and formalized by the adoption of the Fenway Special Study Area's final report in 2002. Next slide, please. The In the 20 years since, the BPDA has approved approximately 7 million square feet of development, including several projects that successfully leveraged the PDA entitlement process to deliver residential and commercial uses where gas stations and surface parking lots once stood, the Fenway Community Center, needed public realm improvements, and other important public benefits. Put simply, development proceeding today does so in an environment that is almost unrecognizable from that which informed the initial crafting of zoning in the Fenway. Changes to where PDAs can be located in West Fenway and the limits of their flexibility are needed to uphold the intended purpose of PDAs to deliver transformational public benefits in an environment that is both predictable and rational. Next slide, please. The first of these changes would include 2 map amendments. The first amendment would expand the geographic boundary of the Fenway Triangle Neighborhood Development Area Subdistrict south across Boylston Street to include a portion of the South Boylston NS1 subdistrict from Park Drive to Kilmarnock Street, demonstrated on this map by a dashed blue line. This change would treat the first block of Boylston Street as part of the southern gateway into Fenway at the confluence of 3 important corridors, including Boylston Street, Brookline Avenue, and Park Drive. This change would make the Boylston Street block from Park Drive to Kilmarnock Street eligible to pursue a planned development area. The proposed change would also extend the North Boylston NS3 boundary eastward, demonstrated here by a red dashed line from Richard B. Ross Way to Jersey Street, to include 3 additional parcels that are today regulated by the North Boylston NS2 subdistrict. For these 3 parcels, the map change would increase the allowed height for PDA eligible projects from 150 to 190 feet and reduce an existing residential use requirement from 70% to at least 40% of proposed GFA. This change essentially regularizes the boundary of the subdistricts and brings it into alignment with broader urban design concepts. Next slide. We are simultaneously proposing to increase the PDA allowed height in the Brookline Avenue Community Commercial Subdistrict from 150 to 300 feet, and in the Fenway Triangle Neighborhood Development Area Subdistrict from 150 to 250 feet. I'd like to underscore here the point that we are not proposing to change the allowed height in the base zoning for either subdistrict. This change would apply to PDA proposals only and would not create a scenario where proposals could pursue increased height, quote unquote, by right. This recommendation would formalize the Brookline Avenue corridor bookended by Kenmore Square and the Longwood Medical and Academic area, supporting increased height where increased transit service exists today. Parcels in these subdistricts are larger than elsewhere in the West Fenway area and are well suited to contribute greater open space and public realm in exchange for greater height. I would also like to underscore here the point that changes proposed would apply only to PDA allowed height, as no changes to allowed density or FAR are currently proposed. To ensure that this flexibility is indeed leveraged to deliver on the priorities of the Fenway community, Councillor Bach has worked closely with this team to include a brief but meaningful amendment to the text included in section 66-30, public benefits, designed to bring greater consistency, predictability, and transparency to mitigation from future development projects. Councillor Bach's comment letter was included in the record of public comments related to this effort, and I believe she joins us this afternoon to speak on her own behalf. Next slide. In closing, these changes were reviewed in a public process that included 2 virtual public meetings hosted by BPDA staff and an in-person listening session hosted by the City Councilor. We believe that these recommendations are responsive to feedback received throughout that process. We anticipate that ongoing planning efforts, such as the Fenway-Kenmore Transportation Action Plan, may result in the need for additional changes to zoning in the Fenway, and we look forward to continuing our work in close partnership with the Fenway community. Thank you, and before we move to any potential questions the board may have, I'd like to invite Councillor Bach to the mic. Councillor?
Thank you so much, Christina. Madam Chair, may I?
Yes, please. I'm sorry, I'm having a chihuahua breakdown here, but yes, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So, hello, members of the board. I wistfully have to say I think this is my last time appearing before you in this capacity. So glad to be here and grateful as ever for your service. As mentioned by Christina, there's a fairly lengthy letter of mine attached to this proposal, and I started typing a little update letter, and it's now 5 pages long, so you're going to have it by the end of the board meeting, but I'm going to try to just summarize quickly kind of my perspective as the Fenway councilor on sort of where we are and the path forward, and then just a couple of sort of updates since I wrote that 10-page letter. So as was alluded to, Article 66 in the Fenway was really something that it really was in many ways the kind of archetype of the type of policy approach we want to see in zoning. A group of community folks worked with the BPDA over an extended period of time, crafted the article, and as Christina's gone over, there's really been a transformation in the neighborhood. And certainly as a counselor, I love the fact that there's many more people living in the neighborhood now, many fewer surface parking lots, there's a lot of activation, it's a great part of the city. I think that as we think about where the Fenway is going next, though, and especially as projects continue to come, development projects that, to be approved require PDAs, require significant greater density. One of the things that I really hear from my constituents is about frustration of sort of the hoped for things that weren't delivered through that Article 66 unlocking. So there were good things delivered, but a lot of the affordable housing that could have been built in an IDP context in the Fenway instead went to off-site projects. Now that's created great apartments elsewhere, but it means that we haven't seen the ratios of inclusion that folks had hoped for. And then public facilities remain a real sore spot in the Fenway. We have a couple of school department sites that are part of the McKinley, now Mel King school portfolio. And they're really, the school department's thinking about repositioning those right now in order to really give that school community the best facilities. It's currently split across 3 sites. But there is no public library in the Fenway. There is no BCYF. In the pandemic, we kept having to find private sites, and then really fortunately had help from the Fenway Community Center, again, which came through development, to have places for vaccine clinics and food giveaways and such, because the city map has this very obvious sort of gap in this neck of the woods. And I think people don't realize that the Fenway has quite a lot of low-income folks in it, quite a lot of low-income seniors in particular, and really people who rely on and need those city services. And actually, ironically, a big part of the fight for the 55 bus, which we've been engaged in over the last few years, has been because the 55 bus is the way that folks who are not especially mobile and are very transit dependent in the Fenway get to the Copley Public Library, which is their closest public facility. So I mention all that to say that, for me as the counselor, when I think about the next steps for the Fenway neighborhood, I think it's really important that those next steps really in kind of a codified and standardized way get at these things that people want to see delivered as part of the whole neighborhood. And while sometimes, one-off advocacy project by project can yield those things, I think we have much better results, and we're able to think much more holistically about the neighborhood when we have a more standardized approach. So what I had suggested, we've already been doing this for the last number of projects that have come before you on transportation. We've been asking everybody to put $5 a square foot into a fund for transportation improvement implementation in the Fenway, because the Fenway is a nexus for everything. Buses, pedestrians, bikes, cars, it's a total crossroads of the city, and that's great, but it's also created a bunch of transportation dysfunction. And we've got this exciting transportation action plan, which is actually being funded by some of that initial money, but we don't want an action plan and then no action. So the $5 a square foot expectation is something that we have seen really consistent participation in with recent development projects, and so we'd love to see that codified. Some of the other things that are mentioned in my letter are $1 per square foot for lab projects related to lab workforce development, something I know that the board knows the importance of, making sure that it's our local Boston folks who have pathways into these places. Otherwise, it's not going to drive shared prosperity. $2 a square foot for the parks. The linear parks in Fenway are really the oases of the neighborhood, and as it gets more dense, they become more intensely utilized, and really a critical kind of break in the city. And there's been some great capital investment from the city in those parks, but the ongoing maintenance of them is really challenging. Then one of the things that I raised in this letter was the need to have really, like, whenever we're investing in the public realm in these projects, and there's a couple of projects that are proposed that have some really exciting public realm investments, but the public realm is only the public realm if the public can hang out in it. And so really important to that is public accommodation in two senses. One is actually like access to public bathrooms, which we all know determines how long you can be in a place. And then, the other thing is having some affordable concession, because the thing that's come up again and again is, a lot of the seniors, lower income folks I represent in the Fenway just feel like, okay, there's a lot of great amenities these days, but I don't have $10 to drop on a cup of coffee. And if you can't buy anything, it's harder again to kind of hang out and enjoy a space. So the idea of sort of asking our bigger projects, if you're building 500,000 square feet or more, you need to commit to at least one affordable concession and public bathroom access so that people can actually linger in the spaces that you're creating. Then the two remaining big ticket items, one is affordable housing. I think the board knows that this is close to my heart. It's why I'm going to be leaving this role at the end of the month. And again, at the Fenway, like I said, we haven't seen the level of inclusion that we have hoped for. And so and the challenge here, as you guys know, is that right now, the market and how everybody's penciling their projects is driving folks towards lab rather than housing, and certain types of Class A commercial, even though we have our Class C commercial problem. And so we really want to think about, how are we driving use as well in the neighborhood? And so the idea here is to really say that folks doing large commercial projects need to devote 20% of their square footage, their total square footage, to housing, with that housing meeting the 20% IDP units that are already contemplated in the zoning for BDAs in this area. Or devote 10% of total square footage if it's to all affordable housing that you're producing over and above linkage and IDP. So basically the idea being that a project could decide to do an intensive, like, we're really creating new affordable units here, not we're citing our linkage, which, is its own important resource, right? But something where it's like, okay, we're actually going to create new additional housing in the neighborhood, and then it could be a smaller proportion of square footage, because obviously that's a much more resource intensive intervention. And then the last thing is at this public facilities question that I was raising. So the idea that basically with each 500,000 of new square feet in these commercial developments under these PDAs, we would have a new significant public facility. And I mostly mean public facilities in terms of actual public facilities, libraries, park buildings, BCYFs. My letter, you will have seen, contemplates that there might be two private uses that would fall under that. One would be voucher accepting childcare, because it's such a critical need. And the other would be artist workspace, not shops, not a predominantly retail space, but just because Fenway has such a history of artist production and it's becoming prohibitively expensive for anybody to do that here. In my original letter that you have, it sort of proposes a kind of like square footage mechanism for public facilities. I think in further conversation with everyone, it seems like what we really want to say is kind of a significant public facility for each of those 500,000 square feet, because it can vary. So a couple of examples, we've been having a very encouraging conversation with 1400 Boylston about the prospect of a civic space that could serve as a library. To officially make that a library requires a programming study with BPL, and so like some process ahead, but that's been a huge, long desire of the neighborhood. I think that, whether you landed at 10 or 12 or 15,000 square feet would depend on the programming study. I think it's important to me to set some minimum parameters, so I would feel like even if the library didn't need 10,000 tomorrow, we would want to say like, it's going to have the right to expand to at least 10,000, like just because, to put my historian hat on for only 60 seconds, one of the reasons we don't have public facilities in my district is because the extended private development of the Back Bay in the 1860s, 70s that then extended into the Fenway, the city actually asked for sites and the developers denied the city and gave sites to the churches instead because they wanted an exclusive residential vibe. And so there's actually like a real intentionality there behind the way in which the public was excluded from kind of footholds in the Fenway. So for me, there's like a big interest in how do we think even on the century scale about like what the city's footholds are, because that's a series of development decisions long before the BPDA board in 1860, 1870 that we're like still living with into the latter part of the 19th century. So I think like that's an example where really important to me is that this is an enduring toehold, that it's big enough to really matter, but the exact square footage, right, probably gets a little bit determined by our process as we go along. In Fenway Corners, and I'm giving these examples of specific projects because, of course, they have provoked this overarching conversation, and just because I want to give the board of kind of a sense of the type of thing. So Fenway Corners had already proposed an 100-child childcare facility, so that would clearly be one of these. If you think about the kind of, if you think about kind of the first 3/4 of their initial proposal, which is more what would come under this zoning that you're talking about today, so that's one thing. We've been talking about the renovation of the city-owned duck house on Agassiz Road, which has been closed since a fire in the 80s. Would be an amazing stopover point between the East Fens and the West Fens, really knitting the neighborhood together, and being a place for the Victory Gardeners as well. And it's something that the community's long been agitating for improvement of. The reason it hasn't happened is because it's a small, expensive, historic building. So that's obviously not a case where, if that was something the developers committed to, we'd want to, say, oh, but it's only, 1,000 square feet. It would be a huge thing to have it be something that was put back into good use and renovated. So that's another example. And then a third thing we've been talking about a bit, and this is a more creative one, is that we have the Fenway Community Center, which was created through a development process. It's got its space for 20 years. It's got some operating money that's come from development over time, but we have struggled with the fact that it's not kind of a permanent BCYF center in the neighborhood. One conversation is on Jersey Street. One conversation is, could there be a Jersey Street partnership, because the Fenway Corners project is proposing to pedestrianize Jersey Street, and one of the anxieties is, okay, great, we have a beautiful pedestrian Jersey Street, but is that truly a public realm improvement, or does it mostly get privatized by the ballpark games and the kind of adjacent retail tenants? And so one idea is, could there be like a Jersey Street partnership where the Fenway Community Center and the developers partner on a kind of long-term operating basis to do like tons and tons of public events in the space to really kind of claim the space for the public, and not just have it be claimed for like private events. And so, that's an earlier stage conversation, but that's that would be a kind of more creative interpretation of this. But I just wanted to give those examples to say this is the type of thing that I'm thinking on the public facilities side. On the affordable housing side, there is a proposal from one of these projects to support new affordable home ownership units at a different site above and beyond linkage. Those are very expensive to do. The Fenway has very little home ownership, way less affordable home ownership. It would be a huge thing. And then in the Fenway Corners project, we've been talking about getting the residential there up to the 20% IDP, using some vouchers to make up the difference, which would also have the benefit of providing some of the middle income housing opportunities that are included in Article 66 as it stands. And then that still leaves a gap in terms of either putting housing on site or doing some of that above the line off site as well. So that's kind of a little bit on how all of this would cash out. And then Madam Chair, I'm using your full forbearance because I'm never going to do this to you guys again, so I'm sorry.
Oh, please, the floor is still yours.
But just a little bit about the mechanism, because there was, Christina made a reference to the conversation I've had with your staff and with the director, Chief Jemison, about how to do this. I think the issue is that, of course, on the one hand, codifying super specific numbers in zoning is hard because every time the world changes and you want to go back and change a number, you have to do it through zoning commission. On the other hand, like I said, there's a real sense in the neighborhood that, hey, you know, some of the things we've hoped for haven't happened and we really want to have things encoded. So my proposal has been to take a similar approach actually to what we did with AFFH, where the AFFH zoning article makes reference to the AFFH intervention options, which is a policy document approved by this board. So the hook, as it were, is permanently in zoning and sort of establishes like the prerogative of the board to set such a policy. But then there's the ability to update the policy so that there's some flexibility over time. But of course, the policy that you're updating is a across the board policy. So it's not like you're updating it for every project, right? It's like if you're updating it, it's because you're saying, oh, like, you know, now that all the streets have turned into canals, swimming lessons need to be part of the public benefits or whatever, right? Like you're sort of doing something that wasn't anticipated, but you're still keeping it at that generalized level, which I think is really important for legitimate expectations on all sides. So that's kind of the vision, and what's contemplated in this language is that the staff would come back to you guys with a policy sort of codifying some of these things, and then that would be a document approved by the board and able to be updated in the future. And like I said, it's not the first time that you're doing something like this. And then the two more just quick things I wanted to note. One is just, I'd be remiss not to say, because I've said it in my letter and elsewhere, I do think it's really important for the BPDA in the near future to be coming back to the neighborhood with a kind of like coherent plan around shadow in the Fenway. There's obviously this shadow study, it's going to be commissioned. I think that, you know, even with these PDAs, it's important to note the projects that are currently under consideration in these areas do not cast new shadow on the fens, but I think it's important to acknowledge that we don't really want other projects to cast new shadow on the fens absent a coherent shadow policy that everybody can understand. And one of the weird things about the Parklands ordinance is that it was designed to deal with buildings that were assumed to be the only ones that could cast shadow on the park, aka the ones next to the park, and now we build much taller. So the ones that are not in, and so ironically, we've got situations here where we've got buildings that don't really cast any shadow on the park, but they're adjacent to the park, so they come under the ordinance. But then ones that are not adjacent to the park don't fall under the ordinance, but do threaten to cast shadow. So just a flag for the board that I think, as the department thinks about coming back next year with something coherent, I think that's really important to building trust in the Fenway. Those linear parks are so important. I mean, it's literally in the name. It's called the fence. And then, you know, those were all my substantive comments. I wanted to say, I felt like I would be remiss not to say, just as a city councilor appearing here for the last time, like just how much I have appreciated the board's attentive ear through my tenure. I've been doing this for 4 years, and you know, when we as elected officials push to make development more responsive to our communities, we really rely on you as board members to hear our concerns and acknowledge our priorities and let us go on a little longer than we're supposed to. And you guys have shown me that grace time and time again. So I'm not leaving the city. I'm confident that we'll have opportunities to work together again. But I wanted to say that and ask that you accept my thanks for all that you do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, and right back at you. We're excited for you in your new role, and you know your letters, however long they are, or however long your comments are always really enlightening to the board, and just really appreciate the way that you productively and constructively work with our staff to incorporate that in the things that come before us. So thank you for all your hard work.
Thanks.
Okay. Great. So we are on. So it's item number 4. So do we have any questions or comments from the board?
I also want to thank Councilor Bach for the work she's done with us over the last few years. It's quite clear that she has spoken to everyone in the community, to residents and businesses, and to developers and advocacy groups. And the length of your memos to us and your comments have clearly reflected the fact that you're out there listening and synthesizing and then making recommendations to us, which we're very happy to listen to and to do our best to adhere to. So we're going to miss you, but fortunately you're going to a place where the folks you're going to be working for will benefit from the expertise you bring. So I want to thank you for your work.
Thank you, Dr. Lensmark.
Awesome. So any additional questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
We'll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Lensmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item number 5, request authorization to amend the existing license with Cap Long Wharf LLC to extend the term and amend the applicable fee pertaining to the existing license agreement between Cap Long Wharf LLC and the Boston Redevelopment Authority for the use of approximately 15,000 square feet of land adjacent to the Chart House Restaurant on Long Wharf for monthly customer and visitor parking. Lauren.
Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, Secretary Plimus, and Director Jemison. In May 2009, the BPDA entered into a license agreement to allow the use of a 15,000 square foot lot on Long Wharf to service parking needs for the tenants of the custom block building. The license acquired by Cap Long Wharf in 2015 was most recently renewed in 2020, extending the term through May 31st, 2023. Today, staff is recommending that the license term expiration date be extended for an additional year to May 31st, 2024 on the same terms and conditions as the current license, with an additional 2 optional 1-year extensions of the license term. We further request that the monthly fee payable to the BPDA increase to $14,437.50 a month, which represents a 5% increase over the current rate and is consistent with the market rate for this proposed use. During the first year of the extended term, BPDA will receive $165,000. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
We'll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Lensmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Item number 6, request authorization to enter into a license agreement with Northeastern University, allowing for Northeastern University-sponsored activities and events to take place on the BRA-owned land known as Ruggles Plaza in the Roxbury neighborhood. Lauren.
Thank you. As in the past, Northeastern University has requested the use of parts of Ruggles Plaza from June 1st through November 30th, 2023 to host engagement activities for area residents, visitors, and the Northeastern community. On select dates within the term, Northeastern may close the one-way streets to vehicular traffic, place additional street furniture in the one-way streets, and provide space for planned and impromptu activities. Proposed programming includes farmers market, food trucks, music and dance performance, spoken word performance, art making activities, wellness and fitness activities, all in collaboration with local organizations and businesses. Due to the community activation focus of the use, no fee is proposed for this licensed premises. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Lensmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. Before we go on to the next item, we have a member from Councilor Arroyo's office that we'd like to allow to speak on his behalf. Jordan?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Jordan Frias here from Councilor Ricardo Arroyo. From Ricardo Arroyo's office, I apologize. Just wanted to speak in support of 4198 Washington Street in Rosendale once you get to that agenda item. And I appreciate you taking me out of order. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, and noted. Okay, item number 7. Request authorization to enter into an amendment to the license agreement with Preservation of Affordable Housing LLC for the use of land located on parcel P3 in the Campus High School urban renewal area to be used as a support for the Whittier Phase 3 affordable housing development, including material laydown, storage trailers, field office trailers, and parking, and to extend the term of the license agreement. Lauren.
Thank you. The Preservation of Affordable Housing LLC and the BPDA entered into a license agreement in June of 2020 for the use of a portion of parcel P3 for material laydown to be used exclusively for the purpose of supporting the redevelopment of the Whittier Street apartment site on Tremont Street in Roxbury. The BPDA board approved the amendment to this license at the meeting held on June 16, 2022. The license term is currently set to expire on July 1st of this year. The amendment proposed today will extend the license term until December 31st, 2023, and provide for 2 additional 6-month option terms at the sole discretion of the BPDA director. The licensee acknowledges and agrees that the licensed premises is a future development site and the permitted uses are only temporary. Due to the affordable housing component of the development and the significant public subsidy required, no fee is proposed for the use of the licensed premises. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
We'll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 8, request authorization to advertise and issue a request for proposals for qualified developers to redevelop the Austin Street parking lots, 0 Rutherford Avenue and 0 Austin Street, also known as parcel P-15B in the Charlestown urban renewal area, project number Mass R-55. Natalie.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. The Austin Street parking lots, commonly referred to as the Bunker Hill Community College parking lots, consist of 2 large parking lots located at the southwest section of Charlestown. The parking lots are adjacent to Bunker Hill Community College and are currently being utilized by its students. The property was identified as an underutilized site that could address some of Boston's most urgent needs in the public land for public good citywide land audit. The development and design guidelines outlined in the RFP were derived from 3 public meetings held between October 2022 and March 2023, as well as through ongoing Plan Charlestown effort. The development guidelines are centered on the creation of affordable housing, open space with sports fields, pedestrian and bike connections, public realm contributions, retail spaces and ground floor activation, artist spaces, and transit-oriented development. The RFP is mandating that at least 60% of all residential units proposed for the site be affordable units with a range of income restrictions and unit sizes. Proposals will also be expected to include both rental and homeownership units. It was also determined through the community process that proposals should prioritize uses such as neighborhood services, retail, restaurants, athletic uses, and community spaces within this ground floor activation. Design guidelines recommend that the development along I-93 have greater building heights compared to the rest of the site, and that the height should step down towards Rutherford Ave and the existing Charlestown neighborhood. To support the creation of income-restricted housing at the property, respondents to this RFP may seek support through the Mayor's Office of Housing for public funding for income-restricted units. Projects that meet eligibility requirements of this RFP may be qualified for funding through the American Rescue Plan Act administered through MOH. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing and seeing none, motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
We'll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Landsmark?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 9, request authorization to advertise and issue a request for proposals for qualified developers to redevelop parcel P12C in the South Cove urban renewal area, project number Mass R-92, located at 290 Tremont Street in Chinatown. Emma.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Emma Bird. I'm a senior real estate development officer here at the BPDA. I joined a few months ago, and it's a pleasure to be here. So today I'm here to request approval to advertise and issue an RFP for parcel P12C, which is located at 290 Tremont Street in the South Cove urban renewal area in Chinatown. The 29,000 square foot site is currently used as a surface parking lot and was identified as an underutilized site that could address some of Boston's most urgent needs in public land for public good citywide land audit. We are seeking reissuance of an RFP at this site after the previously tentatively designated redevelopment project fell through due to the impacts from the COVID-19 pandemic. Most recently, BPDA and city staff held a series of public meetings in November and December of 2022, in January and March of this year, to derive the development and design guidelines outlined in the RFP. The objective for the redevelopment of the property is to create a mixed-use infill development that prioritizes affordable housing and a vibrant streetscape environment at the ground level. Consistent with the goals identified in public discussions with the community, the RFP requires that at least 60% of all residential units must be income restricted, and preference will be given to proposals with home ownership units, units with more bedrooms, and units with deeper levels of affordability. Additionally, proposals should provide commercial space that activates the ground floor through the inclusion of community and/or cultural uses such as small businesses, a grocery store, local retail, and/or civic programs. Furthermore, the RFP guidelines emphasize the importance of pedestrian connectivity with a through-block connection and seek proposals that prioritize the public realm and encourage bicycle and public transit use. To support the creation of income-restricted housing at parcel P12C, respondents to this RFP may seek public funding for the income-restricted units through the Mayor's Office of Housing. This funding may include, but is not limited to, funding from the American Rescue Plan Act. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Okay, great. Do we have any questions or comments for Emma? Okay, hearing and seeing none. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Hansmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you and
Thank you.
welcome. Okay, item number 10. Request authorization to enter into a contract for consultant services with AECom Technical Services Incorporated for the design and engineering services for the Resilient 4-Point Channel Infrastructure Project in the amount of $2 million. Chris.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Secretary Polhemus and Director Jemison. I'm Chris Bush, Assistant Deputy Director of Climate and Environmental Planning. Stated we're requesting authorization for the Director to enter into a contract with AECom Technical Services for design and engineering services for the Resilient 4-Point Channel Infrastructure Project. Next slide, please. This project builds off of the climate vulnerability analysis and resilience strategies developed through the Climate Ready Boston report, which was issued in 2016, and the Coastal Resilience Solutions for South Boston report issued in 2018. The city's Climate Ready Boston program has provided a great technical analysis of the timing and location of current and future flood events along the channel. This image from the Climate Ready report indicates some of these flood pathways emanating from 4-Point Channel into the South Boston neighborhood. Under existing coastal flood conditions, we see public ways that are flooded adjacent to the channel, and by 2030, when we anticipate around 9 inches of sea level rise, we will see even worse conditions potentially affecting larger residential areas and impacting significant infrastructure. Next slide, please. The Climate Ready South Boston report prioritized implementation of flood protection measures along the channel due to these current and future flood vulnerabilities, and developed conceptual designs for resilience informed by South Boston stakeholders and residents. This is another image from the Climate Ready South Boston report representing some of the green or soft infrastructure and some of the gray or hard infrastructure measures along the east side of the channel. Next slide, please. The goal of this project is to implement resilient flood protection infrastructure along the channel in this area to reduce these risks. The project will construct approximately 2,000 linear feet of mixed berm, elevated harbor walk, and flood wall mitigation features. This is a design schematic from a FEMA grant application that was filed in 2019 to support this project. The areas you see in green are elevated berms, and sort of the purple and gray areas are elevated harbor walk and seawall. Next slide, please. And this represents a preliminary concept of what that berm element could look like along the channel. The design and engineering services contract is the first step in this project and will involve an engineering assessment and site investigations of the project area. The project team will be working very closely with adjacent property owners throughout the existing conditions evaluation, including the Gillette company. Based on the initial engineering assessment, project design will be developed and refined through further engagement with those property owners and area residents. Final construction documents will be developed for public bid, and the construction phase of this project will be subject to future BPDA board approval for the selection of a construction contractor. The contract duration for the design and engineering services will be approximately 14 months. Next slide, please. With respect to the procurement process, on July 14th of last year, the BPDA board authorized the secretary to advertise and issue a request for proposals for the design and engineering services. On December 19th of last year, the BPDA issued an RFP, and we received responses on February 10th, 2023 from 5 very qualified consultant teams, including in alphabetical order, AECOM Technical Services, Arup US, Collins Engineers, HDR Engineering, and Thornton Tomasetti. These responses were initially reviewed to ensure that they met the minimum threshold of quality requirements. An RFP review committee comprised of staff from BPDA planning and capital construction departments, as well as the city's environment department, then reviewed the RFP technical responses, and we also held interviews with all the respondent teams. With respect to consultant selection, the RFP selection committee evaluated all the technical proposals based on the following criteria. Those are qualifications of staff, relevant experience, demonstrated capacity for project tasks, qualified sub-consultants, and understanding of the project scope of services. As a result of this evaluation, AECOM Technical Services was selected as the most advantageous respondent. AECOM is joined by a team of sub-consultants with extensive experience related to the project tasks. Sub-consultants include Weston and Sampson, Woods Hole Group, City Point Partners, CDW Consultants, Geologic Earth Exploration, and Brennan Consulting. In the selection of AECOM, the review committee members noted the respondent team's prior design and engineering work related to climate resilience and coastal projects, experience with Boston climate change initiatives and planning, strong public engagement experience, and very detailed approach for completion of the project tasks. With regard to funding, the city's capital budget includes a total allocation for this project. The project funding also serves as part of the required local match for the FEMA grant supporting this project. Happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
Will this presentation be posted on our website in a way where the general public can take a look at it? And in relation to that, I wonder if we could highlight the fact that we now have a dossier, in effect, a file of projects that relate to these resilience efforts that a lot of people would want to take a look at as we move forward. So I wonder how we're going to let the public know that the details of this kind of work are available through the agency.
Yeah, Board Member Lansmark, we do have a web page specific to this project with a fair amount of content. There's been a good amount of work preceding the issuance of this RFP, just involved with the FEMA grant application. There's been some level of NEPA process review and content and public meetings associated with that. So most definitely we can post this information as well. And we also obviously work very, very closely with the city's environment department, Climate Ready program. They've got excellent resources through their webpage, specifying throughout the harbor, the status of these projects, where they're occurring, their near-term, long-term. So we can, take another look at our resources to see how those are linking up to ensure we are getting the word out on this very important work.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question. Chris, it's kind of similar to Dr. Landmark's. Were these people hired to design and engineer, or are they hired to execute something that's already been designed and engineered?
Well, there was a preliminary design that needed to be developed as part of a grant application that we submitted to FEMA back in 2019. So those images I was showing from the presentation were from that application. We need to advance and complete that design and get it to construction documents. FEMA is also requiring that we get to about a 30% design level with this work, and they want to review that level of design to ensure that what the structural elements are going to be advanced can function to support their requirements and design requirements for purposes of FEMA flood mapping, ensuring again that these are structures that will keep water out of the neighborhood in these areas.
Yeah, okay, because it's not really this huge engineering feat to just build bigger seawalls. I didn't know if there was more to it. Like, are they talking about storage of water during these times?
Yeah, this is just more of a barrier system to keep water out along the shoreline. There are some landside deployable elements as well in some public ways to prevent flanking of water into this area. But it's not anticipated to function in any way as a storage measure.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Lansmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 11, request authorization to advertise and issue a request for qualifications for physical security infrastructure planning for 4 properties owned by the Boston Redevelopment Authority. Laura.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. As I mentioned during the EDIC portion of today's board meeting, the BPDA real estate team is currently implementing a best-in-class security program as part of our fiscal and operational stewardship of our public property. The details of this joint RFQ are the same as those presented earlier today, although I'll note that the BRA-owned China Trade Center building, located at 2 Boylston Street, will be the most significant portion of the work. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Makes sense. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Lansmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thanks, Laura. Here we go again. Request authorization to advertise and issue an invitation for bids pursuant to MGLC 30B for snow clearance and salting sanding services on scattered BRA-owned properties. Laura.
Thank you one final time, Madam Chair. Although it's 86 degrees at this moment, we seek to issue this invitation for bids for snow removal to align with industry timelines to make sure we connect with potential partners while they're assessing their capacity for the coming snow season. The scope, requirements, and outreach for this invitation for bids reflect a lot of input from small, local, minority, and women-owned businesses. And as you know, we've had success diversifying our spend on landscaping, site cleanup, snow removal, and similar types of services. We appreciate tools like the BPDA's buying plan, as well as collaboration with city agencies that are helping us broaden our reach. The term of this contract will be 1 year with 2 one-year options to renew, and the contract value is not anticipated to exceed $250,000 per year, although our actual spend is often less based on weather conditions, which was certainly the case this past snow season. With that, thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
We'll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thanks, Laura. Okay, item number 13, request authorization to advertise and issue a request for proposals for qualified developers to redevelop 5 parcels, 21 Fernborough Street, 23 Fernborough Street, 25 Fernborough Street, 27 Fernborough Street, of course the word that I can't say, and 29 Fernborough Street in the Brunswick King Urban Renewal Area, Mass. number R168 in Dorchester. Jonathan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Director Jemison, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. I'm here today to request approval to advertise and issue an RFP for 3 BPDA parcels and 2 Mayor's Office of Housing parcels, which together create 14,914 square feet of vacant land located in the Brunswick King Urban Renewal Area in the Dorchester neighborhood. The ability to dispose of these 5 adjacent parcels was made through a board-approved acquisition of the private parcel at 25 Fernborough Street. These parcels are located at the intersection of Fernborough Street and Intervale Street. The location is across from the Children's Park on Intervale in the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. K-8 school off of Fernborough. This RFP launches a joint venture between the BPDA and Mayor's Office of Housing to continue the agency's efforts to best utilize scattered site buildable residential land through the guidance of the community. The BPDA staff held the initial community meeting for this project on December 8th, 2021. The community raised concerns about the lack of parking in the neighborhood and the potential harms to Orange Street parking for the teachers at the Martin Luther King School. At the next 2 community meetings in March and July of 2022, the BPDA was able to address the parking concerns by requiring a 1-to-1 ratio of off-street parking and informing the community about the pathway to bring the resident permit parking program to the streets of Fernborough and Intervale Street. On March 23rd, 2023, the BPDA held another community meeting to discuss the design guidelines and housing costs for the project. The RFP being released seeks creative and innovative proposals for residential housing that meets the following objectives: the development of a maximum of 12 units of home ownership residential housing. The units developed must be sold with 1/3 of the units at 80% AMI, 1/3 at 100% AMI, and 1/3 at market rate. The development must provide off-street parking at a 1-to-1 ratio to the units built and the spaces created, and a higher percentage of the dwelling units of the site must be for families of more than 1 individual. The BPDA staff recommends that the Secretary be authorized to advertise and issue the request for proposal from qualified developers for 29 through 21 Fernborough Street in the Brunswick King Urban Renewal Area in Dorchester. With that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
We'll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Landsmark?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 14. Request authorization to extend the tentative designation status of Asian Community Development Corporation as developer and sponsor to redevelop BRA-owned parcel R1 in the South Cove Urban Renewal Area, project number Mass R92, located at 0, 55, and 57 Hudson Street, 0, 52, 54, 56, and 58 Tyler Street, and 0 Holland Place in the Chinatown neighborhood of Boston as a mixed-use building consisting of affordable housing with space anticipated for a Chinatown branch library for 12 months through April 30th, 2024. Emma.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We are requesting board approval to extend the tentative designation of Asian Community Development Corporation for the development and long-term lease of parcel R1 in the Chinatown neighborhood. Parcel R1 is an approximately 18,000 square foot site located in the South Cove urban renewal area. It is comprised of 14 contiguous assessors parcels of land bounded by Harvard Street to the south, Tyler Street to the west, Hudson Street to the east, and bordered to the north by the rear of 75 Neelan Street. The BPDA released a request for proposals for the redevelopment of parcel R1 in August of 2021. The RFP contemplated a mixed-use building consisting of affordable housing with space anticipated for a Chinatown branch library. In April of 2022, the BPDA board approved the tentative designation of Asian Community Development Corporation for the redevelopment of parcel R1. The development team proposes a 12-story structure with 110 residential units, all of which are income restricted to a variety of income levels. The project will also add approximately 17,000 square feet of community use space for the long-awaited Chinatown branch of the Boston Public Library. Since being granted tentative designation, the development team has made significant progress, including receiving Article 80 approval from the BPDA board in December of 2022, receiving Boston ZBA approval in February of 2023, and submitting successful affordable housing funding applications. During the requested 12-month extension, the development team plans to continue to seek additional affordable housing funding, to close on construction financing, to negotiate a ground lease with the BPDA, and to finalize design specifications for the core and shell of the library space with the City of Boston. Once those items are complete, we will bring this team back to the board for final designation. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So move.
Second.
We'll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Lansford?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 15, request authorization to extend the tentative designation status of NUBA LLC for 6 months to October 31st, 2023 as a developer of a portion of parcel 8 located at Harrison Avenue and Washington Street in the Nubian Square area of Roxbury. Jonathan.
Thank you all again. This request is for a 6-month extension to the tentative designation for NUBA LLC for a portion of parcel 8 located at Harrison Ave and Washington Street, owned by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the City of Boston. As you may recall, the board originally voted to award NUBA LLC tentative designation on April 15th, 2021, and extended that tentative designation on April 14th, 2022, and again on October 13th, 2022. NUBA LLC is proposing to create approximately 110,000 gross square feet of residential space, which will include 114 all-affordable units, consisting of 47 homeownership units and 67 rental units. Additionally, 7 of those units will be live-work units for Boston artists. Lastly, there will be ground floor commercial space offered to the National Center for Afro-American Arts Satellite Museum. Since the last extension, NUBA LLC has made significant progress towards final designation. Some of the milestones they have achieved in this process include an award of $2.4 million in November of 2022 from MassWorks, approval by the Boston Landmarks Commission, funding from the Mayor's Office of Housing amounting to $4.5 million for the homeownership units and $2.5 million for the apartments, completed environmental phase 2, completed DHCD applications, submitted Boston Water and Sewer Commission in PIC applications, completed 100% of their DD set for the apartments and condos, completed detailed park plans to the BLC and the Massachusetts Historical Society, received affordable housing and acceleration certificates for NUBA homes and apartments, and filed the TAPA agreement. During this request of tentative designation extension, the developers will seek BPDA design review approval negotiate terms of the deed and land disposition agreement with the BPDA, pursue additional sources of project financing, and complete permitting for the project. With that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, item number 16. Request authorization to extend the tentative designation status of Madison Trinity 2085 Development LLC as redeveloper of a portion of parcel 10B of the Southwest Corridor Development Plan known as Parcel B for 6 months until October 31st, 2023, and to authorize the extension of the temporary license agreement for Tropical Food International Incorporated's continued use of parcel 10B for parking. Jonathan.
Thank you all again. This request is for a 6-month extension to the tentative designation for Madison Trinity 2085 Development LLC for a portion of parcel 10 in the Southwest Corridor Development Plan owned by the BPDA and MassDOT, known as Parcel B. As you may recall, the board originally voted to award Madison Tropical tentative designation on May 15, 2012, and most recently extended that tentative designation again on October 13, 2022. Madison Trinity is proposing to create approximately 112,954 gross square feet of residential space, which will include 96 residential units, in which 94 of those units will be affordable. There will also be 2,412 square feet of community amenity space in this building. Lastly, it will include 96 residential parking spaces and a below-grade parking garage. It should be noted that the residential program is a change from the previous commercial building design that was proposed at the beginning of this disposition process. Since the last extension, Madison Trinity has made significant progress towards final designation. Some of the milestones they have achieved in this process include submission of the updated funding applications with the City of Boston's Mayor Office of Housing, initial review of supplemental materials related to the geotechnical environmental due diligence for the MEPA, ZBA board approval, and completion of review with the Boston Civic Design Commission. During this requested tentative designation extension, the developers will negotiate terms of the ground lease with the BPDA and seek additional funding from the Department of Housing and Community Development. With that being said, I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Item number 17, request authorization to extend the tentative designation status of the Frederick Douglass Peace Park Stewardship Committee and the Boston Food Forest Coalition for 12 months to April 30th, 2024 as developer of BRA parcels X26B and X262 in the South End Urban Renewal Area, project number Mass R-92, known as the Frederick Douglass Peace Garden. Jonathan.
Thank you all again. This is my last memo. This request is for a 12-month extension to the tentative designation for the Frederick Douglass Peace Park Stewardship Committee and the Boston Food Forest Coalition for the redevelopment of 2 parcels owned by the BPDA, known as the Frederick Douglass Peace Garden. As you may recall, the board originally voted to award the Frederick Douglass Peace Park Stewardship Committee and the Boston Food Forest Coalition tentative designation status on April 14th, 2022. The proponents of this project are using a 2-phase approach to the development of the community garden. Phase 1 in the tentative designation period is where they have engaged in the initial cleanup and beautification of the property while conducting a year-long design process in collaboration with neighbors and community and members of the community in seeking construction financing. Phase 2 is after final designation is granted, where the design improvements will be constructed. Since their tentative designation, the proponents have completed the draft site plans and drawings and submitted them to the BPDA for review. They have also secured $10,500 through through grants and donations from community development corporations and nonprofits. Lastly, they have completed and submitted an operation, maintenance, and security plan to the BPDA for review. During this requested to no designation extension, the proponent will seek BPDA approval of their design plans and operation and maintenance and security plans. They will apply for CPA funding, and they will negotiate the terms and conditions of the deed and land disposition agreement with the BPDA and the Boston Food Forest Coalition. With that being said, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Sorry, I was muted. Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Right, item number 18, request authorization to award tentative designation status to Civico Development LLC and Dream Collaborative LLC for 555 through 559 Columbia Road in Dorchester to enter into lease negotiations with the redeveloper to facilitate the long-term lease and redevelopment of the parcel. Natalie.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. 555 to 559 Columbia Road, also known as Site 1 in Upham's Corner, in the Upham's Corner implementation process, is at the heart of the Upham's Corner district in Dorchester. This site consists of a parking lot with 17 parking spaces and a 3-story masonry building built in 1915 for the Dorchester Trust Company. The BPDA acquired 555 Columbia Road in an effort to strategically develop parcels to align with the goals of Imagine Boston 2030 and the Upham's Corner Station area plan of the Fairmount Indigo Planning Initiative. The original RFP issued in 2020 sought to redevelop the site as well as operate the adjacent city-owned Strand Theater. However, no responses were received. On March 10th, 2022, the BPDA board authorized the issuance of a new RFP for the redevelopment of the site, adding in the obligation to provide an Upham's Corner branch library, affordable housing, affordable commercial space, while also removing the inclusion of an operator for the Strand Theater. The objectives of the second RFP were built on earlier community-oriented planning processes that were reflected in part by the priorities of the Working Advisory Group, also known as the WAG. The WAG is a city-appointed advisory group that includes residents, business owners, advocates, and other community leaders who have helped shape the RFP. The BPDA received 2 proposals for the redevelopment of the site in June 2022. The BPDA, in collaboration with the WAG and other city departments, conducted an extensive community engagement process to evaluate these proposals in order to ultimately make a recommendation for tentative designation. After a thorough review from the BPDA's real estate team, the Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion, the Mayor's Office of Housing, the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, and the Boston Public Library, in conjunction with the community, we are recommending that the board award tentative designation status to Civico Development and Dream Collaborative. They are proposing to build 33 units of workforce housing with an AMI ranging from 70 to 100% and nearly 200,000 square feet of space for the branch library. The proposal was considered highly advantageous due to its exceptional design that was considerate of the architectural context of the neighborhood, the creation of 100% affordable home ownership units, and the successful community engagement through the public process. I would now like to introduce the recommended developer for tentative designation, Civico Development and Dream Collaborative, to present their project. I'm happy to answer any questions once the presentation concludes.
Next slide, please. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, staff, community, and administration for the work required to get us here today. My name is Taylor Bearden. I am a partner at Civico Development. Also speaking is our partner, Greg Minot, principal of Dream Collaborative. Next slide, please. Boston's leading minority-owned architecture firm. Civico is a mixed-income housing developer specializing in public-private partnerships. Our most recent developer designation was by the City of Newton to build 43 all-affordable residential units plus the future headquarters of our nonprofit development partner at the former West Newton Armory. Civico and Dreams leadership have a long history of having worked together, both principals having worked at Elkis Manfredi Architects in Boston before founding their own companies. Next slide, please. We are here before you relative to our RFP response for 555-559 Columbia Road. What we've contemplated are 33 units of workforce homeownership at a variety of income levels, all of which are deed restricted, built over a 20,000 square foot public library for the future Upham's Corner BPL branch. We've contemplated the retention of the historic Dorchester Trust facade from 1918, over which a 1,500 square foot creative studio would be built, which would be animated by either residents or a local community organization. We're contemplating very ambitious sustainability goals, not only to address the Commonwealth's overarching goals and the City of Boston, but also to directly reduce utility costs for residents and to create a healthier and more resilient housing unit for anyone who may live there in the future. Next slide, please. The heart of our proposal is to create homeownership opportunity. There are currently approximately 200 units of housing in a variety of phases of approval, only 5% of which are ownership. So we are proposing 100% ownership housing, which means that this project will be owned and managed by those who will call it home. Next slide, please. We've contemplated a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units, which will serve residents with incomes between 70 and 100% of area median income. To put this in context, 2 units recently sold a few minutes walk from the Strand Theater. Sale prices using those as a baseline and 2022 BPDA numbers would be about 30% less for someone at 70% of median income than market, and about 25% less for someone at about 100% AMI than market. Next slide, please, and I'll pass it to my colleague, Greg Minot.
Thank you, Taylor. Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. Chief Jemison, my name is Greg Minot, Managing Principal at Dream Collaborative. So as Taylor mentioned, the project is a mixed-use project, probably 5 stories, with residential above the ground floor library podium. We'll be delivering about 20,000 square feet of tenant space for the Boston Public Library, the Upham's Corner branch, as requested by the RFP. And to further fuel the Upham Corner Arts and Innovation District, the project will also deliver 1,500 square feet of creative studio space. And we've been intentionally not to be prescriptive about how the space will be used, but really leaving it up to the community, the neighborhood, to really shape its use. Next slide. The team is looking to maintain the scale and density along Columbia Road. So we took our cues from the Pierce Building, built around 1905, that's located diagonally across the project, across the street from our project. And these historic images of the previous building on this site also informed our design, which kind of capped it out at 5 stories to also respect the height of the Strand Theater. We also took cues to reinforce the continuous street wall along Columbia Road and complement the area in terms of height, massing, and visual appearance. Next slide. So we are preserving the historic bank facade as a deliberate decision, and we think this is in line with the city's carbon neutrality into 2050 goals of, obviously, if you don't have to build it new, you are preserving carbon. So we're doing that. We're also delivering a high efficiency passive house, all electric building with photovoltaic for the benefit of the owner occupants who will see low operational costs year over year. We're delivering a core and shell space, but we anticipate that the library will be designed to a really high caliber level, reflective of other renovations that includes libraries across the city. Next slide. So we expect to run a process to select a general contractor partner So we are experienced on onboarding local MWB general contractors. We expect to exceed the BRJP standards and really engage in a robust engagement of local hiring. We expect also that there will be permanent jobs, although most of those will come from the library use. And we're engaging local artists in the development of the building as well. Again, as Taylor mentioned, a focus on home ownership in contrast to many of the developments recently completed, which focus on rental, although that's certainly needed, but our focus is really home ownership. So we really thank you, and about any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
I have one question, Madam Chair. Because of the library, have you people, is this going to be bid under Chapter 141 and 149? It's a public building, right?
I mean, I think we're anticipating that the library fit out itself will be a separate process for that. It's really deferred to the BPDA on that, but we are doing the shell of the building.
And is the library going to be a tenant?
It will be a tenant.
And just to elaborate on that, so similar to the process that we undertook for parcel R1 in Chinatown, we'll be seeking a Chapter 149 exemption for just the core and shell of the library component to enable the private construction of this core and shell. But the fit out would be done by the library, by public facilities. It would just be the core and shell we'd be looking for the exemption on.
Will you be seeking the exception through the state?
Yes, we will.
Okay, additional questions or comments? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Congratulations, it's a really exciting project. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good one. Let's see. Item number 19. Correct? Yes. Request authorization to issue a parcel certificate of completion for the successful completion of construction of the 159-2201 Washington Street Building 1 through 4 Monastery project located at 159-201 Washington Street in Brighton, in accordance with Section C4 of the Cooperation Agreement by and between the Boston Redevelopment Authority and Cabot and Forbes, dated January 9th, 2018. This is a certificate of completion, so a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Item number 20, request authorization to issue a certificate of completion for the successful completion of construction of the building located at 212 to 222 Stewart Street in the Bay Village neighborhood of Boston, in accordance with Section C4 of the Cooperation Agreement by and between the BPDA and Stewart Acquisition 12 LLC and the Stewart Acquisition 22 LLC, dated December 20th, 2019. Certificate of completion, so a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Item number 21, request authorization to issue a certificate of completion for the successful completion of construction of the Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center new inpatient building project located at 111 Francis Street, Boston, in accordance with Section 3F of the Cooperation Agreement by and between the Boston Redevelopment Authority and Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, dated June 18th, 2019. So certificate of completion, a motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Okay, item number 22. Request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E Small Project Review of the Boston Zoning Code for the construction of 25 residential rental units, including 4 IDP units, 5 parking spaces, and 25 bicycle spaces located at 734 Dudley Street, and to take all related actions. Quinn.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Secretary Paulimas, and Director Jemison. The proposal before you is for an Article 80 small project change located at 734 Dudley Street in Dorchester. The proposed project change involves adding a story and 5 additional units to a previously approved 5-story 20-unit building. The resulting project will be a 6-story, 31,273 square foot building with 25 rental units. The project change also adds an additional IDP unit, bringing the total to 4, and reduces on-site parking to 5 spaces to accommodate the addition of a bike storage room. The BPDA held a virtual public meeting on February 8th, 2023 to discuss these changes with the community. The meeting was well attended and advertised in the newspaper and online. I want to thank everyone who contributed their time towards improving this project. Due to a scrivener's error for the vote, this item needs to be amended to reflect that the building is a 6-story building, not a 4-story building. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Adriana Lasso-Harrier, to discuss the planning context that was considered in the review of this project before Mai Lam and Artin Sadiku from the development team begin their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Quinn. Good evening, members of the board, Director Jemison, and Secretary Paulimas. My name is Adriana Lasso-Harrier, and I'm a neighborhood planner covering Dorchester. The proposed project before you now is one of 3 Article 80E small projects that I'll be bringing forth for your consideration this evening in Dorchester. This particular project is located within the planning boundaries of the Upham's Corner Station Area Plan, a planning process which was part of the larger Fairmont Indigo Planning Initiative established in 2012. Planning division staff also considered the neighborhood context, adopted citywide plans, including Imagine Boston 2030 and Go Boston 2030, the zoning code, and public feedback to review the project. The proposed project makes significant progress towards realizing planning goals outlined in the Upham's Corner Station Area Plan, including those of developing mixed-income housing near the Main Street and Station area, encouraging biking and transit use through transit-oriented development and the inclusion of bike facilities, and promoting a vibrant mixed-use neighborhood through amenities such as local retail and publicly accessible open space. Next slide. During project review, staff provided guidance that resulted in reduced parking, bike amenities, increased affordable units, and significant improvements to an outdoor public space that is adjacent to the proposed project site. This public space will retain its strong tree canopy and serve as an outdoor amenity for both residents of the proposed project as well as the public at large. The improvements to the plaza include 2 new trees, 4 benches, and 2 raised planters that will help screen the parking from the sidewalk. I'll now turn it over to the proponents for more discussion.
Thank you, Quinn, and thank you, John, for the introduction. My name is Mai Lam. I am the permitting consultant for the developer. The developer's name is Val Dapina. He is to my right. He has owned this parcel since 1991, so he is a local resident as well as a local small business owner. This project was approved for 20 units in 2017. It took a little while to get to the financing stage, and it started certainly right before COVID happened. So what we've come to ask is to add 5 more additional apartments to the 6-story to make the project financially feasible. And I will turn it to our team to kind of go through the architectural slides for the project. Artin is the architect on the project.
You're muted.
Sorry. My name is Artin Sadiku. I'm the architect for this project. I was introduced later in the process of the design. So that another team was designing this before. I have been engaged by the developer to make these latest changes, the addition of the 5 units, and also to work with BPDA staff to redesign the new massing and also respond to the neighbors' comments during the process. So as introduced before, our site is at the intersection between Dudley Street and Wendover Street, very close to Upland Corners, basically 2 blocks distance. Next slide, please. This is supposed to tend to illustrate the general massing of the site. You will see where our site is showing work in progress. Work is already in progress there, and there is existing high buildings, about 6 stories. Our proposed massing is not higher than these existing buildings in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. These are a few photographs, street view photos of the neighborhood context that have been basically our basis of deciding about the different architectural features of our massing and elevations. Next slide, please. Other photographs of the neighborhood context. The upper 2 photographs show the existing conditions of our site. So work is in progress, and what you see there is Dudley Terrace in its present condition. Next slide, please. After all the discussion and design iterations with BPDA staff and also getting feedback from the neighborhood presentation and also incorporating them into the facade, this is what we present you today. This is a very, I would say, typical building structure that we see contemporarily built in the area. We are presenting our front elevation with architectural concrete masonry veneer at the lower floors, and then switching on the upper floors to fiber cement siding of various types in order to achieve this kind of combination that you see. Next slide, please. This would be the view from Dudley Street, street eye view. This would be the intersection between Dudley and Wendover Street. You'd see on the right there's the residential entrance, whereas in the front there you have 3 commercial tenant spaces. Next slide, please. This is our site plan / first floor plan. Our site is very small and our building is very compact to fit in that slide. Into the site, we have, like I said, 3 commercial tenants facing Dudley Street, and on the side of it we have Dudley Terrace with the improvement that we're proposing, like mainly 2 additional trees, more pavers, benches, and repaving of the space. In the back on Wendover Street, we have the residential entrance, and then we have the parking space entrances. We're also accommodating 25 bike spaces to be stored in the first floor. Next slide, please. This is our typical layout for the floor plans. It's a very typical double-loaded corridor floor plate. We have units on both sides and 2 means egress of egress provided for the tenants. Next slide. These are the side elevations. We are continuing with the same vernacular that we were proposing at the front elevation, with the same materials, like I said, with architectural concrete masonry units veneer on the 2 first floors, and then switching to fiber cement siding at the upper levels. And this is our building in a short format.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation?
Yeah, I mean, there's the next slide.
Oh, there's another slide, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the wrap up, yeah.
So to wrap it up, we were proposing 25 units overall and 25 parking, bike parking and 5 parking spots.
Okay, great, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I do have a question. Did I hear the original approval was April of 2017?
The permit set that I have, it's April 2019.
2019.
Yeah.
I do have a question. We're so desperate for housing. I understand COVID and all that, but 4 years, an awful long time to be sitting without getting things underway. If you receive approval, when would you plan to start construction?
COVID has certainly been a big part of it, and once the decision was made to us to develop 5 more units, we had to go back to this process of getting feedback and coordinate with BPDA and going through the zoning process again. In terms of construction, we are already on construction. We have a valid permit, and we are building as much as it's allowed before getting approval for these 5 additional units. So we're ready to go.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Additional questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, the motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Lensmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, item number 23, request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E Small Project Review of the Zoning Code for the construction of 47 residential rental units, including 29 IDP units, 18 parking spaces, and 57 bicycle spaces located at 243 through 255 Hancock Street, and to take all related actions. Tyler.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. The proposal before you is an Article 80 small project at 243 to 255 Hancock Street, also known as 247 Hancock Street, Dorchester. The proposed project consists of a new 6-story residential building. The 6-story building will contain 47 rental units, 60 of which will be dedicated affordable between 30 to 80% AMI. The project will deliver 18 off-street parking spaces, 57 bike spaces for residents. Furthermore, the BPDA held a public meeting for this project in March of 2023, which was well attended and advertised in the local newspaper. Now, before I turn it over to Adriana Lasso-Hare from BPDA Planning to discuss the planning context before Benji, Danny, and Ruthie from the development team begin the project. Last, I want to say thank you to the members of the public, elected officials, and city agencies who helped review the 247 Hancock Street project. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Good evening again, members of the board. So this proposed project in front of you is not located within the boundaries of a recent planning initiative. Instead, Planning Division staff considered the neighborhood context, particularly the proposed project's close location to other recently constructed and approved projects, as well as public feedback, adopted citywide plans, including Imagine Boston 2030 and Go Boston 2030, and the zoning code during review. Next slide. Oh, sorry, this is the same slide. So during review, planning and design staff guided the proponent in making substantial pedestrian safety and public realm improvements. These changes included curb cut reduction, driveway and parking consolidation, and the addition of a public open space at the front of the building. This public space will align with the new street and views corridor proposed by the nearby dot block development, effectively formalizing a pedestrian crossing located at the entrance of this public space. Upon potential approval by the board, BPDA staff will continue to work with the proponent on remaining streetscape and landscape improvements. I'll turn it over to the development team.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Benji Mall. I am one of the principals and founder of ARCS Urban. Thrilled to be here today to present 247 Hancock Street, Dorchester. Next slide, please. Overall, the project sits on a 16,564 square foot lot. It will be a 47 unit building made up predominantly of 2 and 3 bedroom units. Over 70% of the units are larger units. We developed the building next door in the midst of COVID, and the building was the first project in the city to have CPA funding and mass housing workforce funding combined. We received over 1,000 income restricted applications during COVID. And so I think what we're trying to do in this project is carry over the need for a diverse array of housing opportunities for members of this community. And so ultimately, throughout the community process, we committed to increase the number of income restricted units to 62%. The total project size is about 48,000 square feet with a 2.9 FAR and 18 parking spaces. One of the things that we've been particularly proud of is prioritizing people over parking. And so we have additional availability in the parking lot next door, where if there's demand above and beyond 18 spaces, we have the ability to park folks in this building in our next door lot. And again, we have 57 bike storage spaces on site, so more than the number of total units in the building. Next slide, please. We've done a significant community process to date. We have, which started almost a year ago. We've had 6 or 7 neighborhood meetings informally, in addition to the BPDA public meeting, where we received positive votes from the community association meetings. We have local elected support. And throughout that process, as I mentioned, we increased affordability dramatically, well beyond the IDP requirements. We're maximizing open space in front of the building, and we really had a very candid and great conversation with the community about the trade-offs between density and open space, and ultimately got the community on board with a large public park in the front of the building in exchange for some additional density in the back of the building. And we'll also add public art coordinated with local artists and a rigorous, really sustainable design standards, which will include solar power. It won't just be solar ready. Next slide, please. So this project is at the intersection of Meeting House Hill, Jones Hill, and Savin Hill. It's one of the most socioeconomically and racially diverse communities in the entire city of Boston, and we look forward to continuing that with a plethora of housing opportunities across the income restricted spectrum. Next slide, please. So you can see here our project right next door at 233 Hancock, the Meeting House, was built just before the dot block development started across the street, which I believe will provide over 400 new higher end apartments. And so what we're trying to do here is capture some of the members of the community that can't afford the dot block development across the street, and but want to live in this new highly amenitized mixed income corridor, mixed use corridor. Next slide, please. So here's the current kind of conditions of the site. It's a car wash currently, which is a source of significant traffic along Hancock Street. And you can see the improvements across the street in the phase 1 of the dot block. And so our project essentially matches the massing both of our project next door as well as the project across the street. So I'll turn it over to Ruthie from Rohde Architects to talk a little bit more about our design thinking.
Thanks, Benji. Ruthie Kuhlman with Rohde Architects, and I have Ben Bruce with me as well. If you can go to the next slide. So this is just a little look at kind of our analysis of the site, which led to the building design. Like a couple key features here. If you look in the upper left, there's a huge change in topography, about 45 feet, with the ledge directly behind the site, which kind of changes the zoning heights from Hancock Street up to Church Street. And then if you look at the bottom left diagram, it's what everyone's been alluding to, and Adriana mentioned earlier, the connection coming across the street from dot block, specifically the pedestrian connection, was one of the driving forces of our design. Next slide. So you can see here the diagram at the top. This was kind of our conceptual approach to the site. We really pushed the building back at that edge where that pedestrian connection is coming through from dot block. Really looking to kind of create an amenitized area along the street. And when you look at the bottom, we kind of have our massing buildup. You can see the start on the left with a kind of big extruded massing. Then first that major pushback where we're creating the public plaza on the ground floor. and then utilizing the context of the surrounding buildings to create setbacks and pushbacks sculpturally in our facade that start to reference those different datums and set back our top story further away on the street so we can create exterior amenity deck there. Next slide. So this is our site plan. As Benji mentioned, we have parking, and it's all at the back of the site, connected through the kind of shared drive adjacent to the site that 233 Hancock uses currently. On the street, we have amenity, lobby, and the dedicated bike room, all kind of fronting and activating Hancock Street. And then you can see our proposed landscape plaza here, which would connect a new pedestrian crosswalk that ties into Dot Block with that kind of curb extension Adriana was talking about, and lead directly into the plaza and the front door of the lobby. We're integrating planting and benches and different kind of seating opportunities throughout the plaza and creating a way that it can be a kind of connection along the sidewalk, and also incorporating exterior bike parking, street trees, and a place for a new blue bike station on that curb cut extension at the crosswalk. Next slide. So these are some conceptual renderings of our facade. And what we were really looking to do was reference the kind of adjacent context. You can see 233 Hancock Street right next door, and use a material that would create richness and texture and respond to kind of the shifting planes of the building as it moved up. We're also looking to bring in a warm wood tone material that really comes in at the locations where people are interacting with the facade. So the setback ground floor would be all kind of this warm wood tone, the amenity deck up on the top floor level, and also each of the window locations as well. Next slide. And so through discussions with the community, we really talked about how we wanted this building to be rich and be welcoming and have warmth to it. So this is kind of a new view that we pulled together to really show how, we're looking to use a rich corrugated metal that will really pick up the light differently across these different surfaces and accent it with this warm wood that kind of brings out, a welcoming tone that invites users and passersby into the ground floor plaza and to kind of feel up and through the building. And so I think that is our last slide. We'd be happy to take any questions from the board.
Awesome, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Okay, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Landsberg?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Approved. Congratulations. Looks like a great warm-looking building and amazing affordable housing additions of this size to our housing stock is very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, so we're going to have to roll back a little bit to make an amendment to a vote we've already taken. So this is for item number 22. So I'm just going to reread it with the amended language, and then we'll take the vote. So item number 22, request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E Small Project Review of the Boston Zoning Code for the construction of a 6-story building, 25 residential rental units, including 4 IDP units, 5 parking spaces, and 25 bicycle spaces located at 734 Dudley Street, and to take all related actions. A motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Okay, so let's move back to item number 24. Request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E Small Project Review of the Zoning Code for the construction of a new 2-story, approximately 42,000 square foot addition, the Cadogan Wellness Complex to Boston College High School, located at 150 through 160 William T. Morrissey Boulevard and to recommend approval to the Board of Appeal for necessary zoning relief to construct the project, subject to ongoing design review. Tyler.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. The proposal before you is an Article 80 small project at 150 to 160 Morrissey Boulevard, Dorchester. The proposed project consists of a new two-story addition to the BC High School. The two-story addition will include a new pool with the grandstand area, locker rooms, weightlifting area, wrestling area, and a new entryway. The project is also adding additional landscaping to the parking lot, to the surrounding parking lot surrounding the building. Furthermore, the BPDA held a public meeting for this project in February of 2023 and was well attended and advertised in the local newspaper. Now I'll turn it over to Adriana Lasso-Hare from BPDA Planning to discuss the planning context before Paula, Michael, Grace, and Paul from the development team begin the presentation. Lastly, I want to say thank you to the members of the public, elected officials, and city agencies who helped review the proposed 150 through 160 Morrissey Boulevard project. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. This proposed project lies within the study area of the Columbia Point Master Plan, a planning study from 2011, which established a vision for a vibrant and sustainable community on Columbia Point. The proposed project supports the planning goals outlined in this master plan, specifically those related to reducing vehicle dependency and adding more greenery and tree canopy along Morrissey Boulevard. The proposed project would be located on a portion of what is currently a surface parking lot serving BC High. During project review, city staff focused on the relocation of parking spaces as well as the preservation and addition of tree canopy, resulting in net reduction of parking on campus and net addition of new trees. I'll turn it over to the development staff now. The development team.
All right, thank you very much, Adriana. Madam Chair and members of the board, my name is Paula Devereaux. I'm an attorney at Pierce Atwood in Boston, and I'm pleased to be here tonight to represent Boston College High School in an exciting new addition. We're here before you for approval under Article 80E for small project review, and I'd like to turn it over right now to Grace Regan, the president of BC High.
Thank you, Paula. And thank you everyone for being here. The Patrick F. Cadigan 52 Family Foundation Wellness Center is a really exciting project for BC High, Columbia Point, and the community. The building and program will provide an enhanced program and space for our 1,400 students, 75% take the T, and over 210 faculty and staff and coaches. And we'd just really like to thank the BC High team and partners, the community members on and around Morrissey Boulevard and Columbia Point, and the elected and all of the members of the BPDA and the planning partners. I'd love to turn it over to my colleague, Michael Hoyle, who's our BC High Senior Vice President of A&F and Strategy, and our CFO, who will walk you through the exciting vision for the projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time to attend this meeting. Especially want to give a shout out and thank you to Tyler. He's spent a lot of time with us and elected officials and community members, and so just want to recognize all the time he put into this. As you heard from Tyler, so this is a two-story addition around our main gym, McNeese Gym, and so this north side of campus, which looks a little industrial, will actually end up being beautified by one, the building, and then two, all of the additional landscaping and trees that will go in on this side. So we'll have preserved all of the existing green space on the campus and we'll beautify this section of campus. It's a two-story building. We'll be doubling the size of our current weight room that will get demolished in the process of building this building, but then our weight room will be doubled to 6,000 square feet. We'll have a cardio space, which we don't have now, a wrestling practice room for the wrestling team, a nutrition wellness kitchen, and classroom that the boys will be able to have classes in there, really understand nutrition and what that means for an athlete or a non-athlete. And then an 8-lane, 25-yard swimming pool with a 1 meter and 3 meter diving board. So we're really excited about this project, and again, thank you all for your time. I'm going to turn it over to our architect, Paul McNeely, who's going to walk you through a couple slides to show you the exterior as well as the interior of the building. Paul?
I don't see him on the meeting.
Ah, okay. Not sure why he's not there. Oh, I can do that. So what you're viewing here on this slide is if you're coming down Morrissey Boulevard, you're coming off of the T, as President Reagan mentioned, the vast majority of our boys take either the commuter rail buses or the T. And you come over the footbridge and down Morrissey, many of them walk into campus this way. Off in the distance, just below the tree over on the right-hand side, you can see a square brick building without any windows. That's our McNeese Gym. And our two-story addition will wrap around this building. Next slide. So here are three different snapshots of, so the top one is McNeese Gym. So we're in between McElroy Hall, which fronts onto Morrissey Boulevard. And behind, on the other side of McElroy, you see McNeese Gym there. And off to the left-hand side will be the new addition, which we'll show you in a couple other slides. The middle slide is now you've moved around and you're looking at it. The north is behind your back if you're standing in the parking lot looking straight at the building. So that entire facade there will be covered by our new building because it will wrap around that gym. And then here you're standing on the other side. So on the left-hand side is Walsh Hall, where we have grades 7 and 8. And then off in the distance over to the right, you can just start to see some of our playing fields. That's Cotter Field and the track right there. And so over to the right on that bottom picture, again, will be the new facility wrapping around that. Next slide. So here is sort of the footprint of the campus. And so what you see in gray are the existing buildings. And then over on the left-hand side there, you see in red, that's the proposed addition. And then all of the green are either playing fields or just grass. The white areas are either pedestrian walkways and or vehicular entrances and exits and parking. Most of the parking for the school is either is actually on the north side of campus where this proposed addition is. The light green circles you see are existing trees, and the dark green circles are the proposed trees that we're going to be adding to the project. Next slide. So here are some elevation drawings of the new building. So the top one, before I showed you McNeese Gym off to the right, and I said over to the left would be the addition. So there's the addition. In the middle is sort of a new entrance into the pool area, and then that big glassy area there looks right straight into the pool. This middle one is now we've moved around the gym. I said, you know, that part didn't have any windows. And so now you're looking straight at this section of the new addition and McNeese Gym you can no longer see. We tried to limit the amount of windows on this side for energy efficiency. And then at the bottom, you swing around on the left-hand side is that Walsh Hall, and over on the right is the new building. That's the fitness and cardio space up there. Behind the windows, and then down below are all of the locker rooms for the boys. Next slide. So again, this is a much, a little more detailed view of what the addition looks like. We're using the same brick pattern that we use throughout the campus, the same window treatments and and door treatments. So we're not introducing any new materials to the palette, the outside palette of the school. Next slide. Again, these are just some more close-up drawings of the addition. And next slide. Again, now we're in the back, so the playing fields are behind us and over to the left. And you can see the trees that we've started to introduce to try to create a little more friendly looking section to this part of campus, as well as to create, once the trees really start to grow and have a canopy, there'll be some nice shaded areas for people to be able to sit out in. Next slide. Yes, and so this just takes you through some of the metrics of the project, and I think this is the last slide. So I think I'll open it back up for if anybody has any questions about anything.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any questions or comments by the board?
Yeah, I have a comment. I'd just like to add that BC High has a tremendous and a well-earned reputation and is an important part of the community. And I'm really impressed. This is a great addition to the campus and will help the school continue that strong tradition. So I'm impressed with what I see. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I definitely echo that. I am curious, though, does BC High have any, relationships with different community organizations or things like that? I mean, I think these facilities are great and are going to be a great thing for your students, but just wondering if there are ever any opportunities for either community groups or other schools to, to ever use them.
Yeah, that's a great question. We haven't formally explored that, but I suspect once we get close to opening the building, people will start approaching us. As they do, they use our fields, and whenever we possibly can, we make the fields available, as well as the rest of the campus. So like this weekend, the state police is parking all their vehicles on campus and getting bussed in for the marathon. So we'll do that with this. You know, we used to use actually UMass Boston's pool, and then they couldn't afford the repairs on it and filled it in. So I wouldn't be surprised if they come calling as well as other folks once they realize the kind of pool that we have there.
Yeah.
If I could add, we have a lot of relationships with Dorchester. We have a lot of the teams play on our fields. We have a great relationship with the Denny Boys and Girls Club. We're doing a lot with our Innovation Center with those folks this summer. We have a great relationship with Harbor Point, and we have a lot of kids from Boston. So we have great relationships, and we do offer our space to many of the communities. We have a Vietnamese celebration this spring, and we will be doing a number of other outreach like Special Olympics, et cetera. So we are very generous with our space to the community members, just so you know, and I'm sure those partnerships will just form naturally.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I know the mayor is investing, has some really great initiatives coming up or already in process on, trying to inventory all of the, city kind of gym kids spaces, right, or different fields. So I know it's something, I think the Office of Innovation or something is working on that to try and make sure we have these spaces in our city for for kids to play and to learn. So no, that's great to hear. Looks awesome. Any other questions or comments?
Comment, Madam Chair. Grace, I still believe you have that 50% policy, the 50% of your student bodies from the city of Boston, right?
I don't think it's not quite 50. Michael, would you know the number off the top of your head?
I think that's the goal. You may not be able to fill it that way, but I believe you have that commitment. If the people.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've doubled down on our areas. Boston, Brockton, Randolph, Quincy, absolutely. And one thing just to note, just from an enrollment perspective, our diversity at our school, This year, of the 9th grade class applicants, 41 students identified as a person of color. And at the Arube division, which is our 7th and 8th, it was 24% of our students identify as a person of color. So we're very committed to all of our diversity, equity, and inclusion and access points here at BC High.
Great, thank you. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll go to East Boston. Item number 25, request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E-6, small project change of the zoning code for the construction of 16 residential rental units, including 2 IDP units, 14 garage parking spaces, and 16 bicycle spaces located at 425 Border Street, and to take all related actions. Nick.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Chief Jemison, and Secretary Polhemus. I'm here before you to present the small project change for 425 Border Street, which was previously approved in 2019 and has since completed its construction. The small project change, filed with the BPDA in February of 2023, contemplates a change of use from condominium to rental for the 16 units. The previous 2 IDP ownership units will also be converted to rentals as well. I will now turn to Fancy Wang to take you through the project.
She's a panelist. She needs to unmute herself.
Oh,
Okay. There we go.
good. Yeah, it's a project has been finished 2 years ago, and it's sitting there waiting for a utility connection, mostly a delay by Eversource. It's a 16 units, 2 bedrooms each, 16 parking. Is near to the subway, and the reason to convert to rental property apartment is basically the financial need. It's required by the bank to pay all the construction loan. If I don't know how to turn the slide. Yeah, so it's finished building. It's on the Border Street.
You could just say next, if you say next slide,
Oh, yeah, next
slide's
slide.
moving. Yeah.
You can see here it's 1.4 miles to or 1.1 miles to 2 different subway stations. And it's near to a bus station as well. Next. Here is a ground parking. 16 parking with 1 acceptable handicap parking. Next. Again, it's a building. Next, please. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, great, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I have a question. So there's been a 2-year delay with Eversource, so you can't sell the condominiums. But if the delay is with Eversource, you won't be able to rent them either. I'm just confused as to how that...
Yeah, so Eversource delay is the reason for us, to apply the rental property now instead of a year or 2 years before. a year before, we should apply for the rental conversion, because at that time, even now, the market is not supporting the condo price. So there's no way we can pay off the construction loan.
So it's a softening of the condo prices that is forcing this decision?
Yes, that's a major thing. Other source is another thing that is minor.
Could you give me an idea of how much prices for your condos dropped from where they were a year or two ago?
Right now, the property probably worth 650 or 700. And when we build this, we budget is like 850 to 900. So that's big difference, like 25%.
It is. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
Any additional questions or comments? All right, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Landsmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Congratulations, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 26, request authorization to issue certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E Small Project Review of the Zoning Code for the construction of two buildings, including a building consisting of 7 home ownership units, 9 parking spaces, and 18 bicycle spaces, and a building consisting of 16,025 square feet of commercial space, 5 parking spaces, and 14 bicycle spaces located at 265 through 267 Armory Street, and to take all related actions. Ebony.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Jemison. The proposed development before you is a small project change for 265 to 267 Amory Street in Jamaica Plain. The project was originally approved by the board in 2021 and included the construction of 2 new buildings, one of which will be the new headquarters for Youth Enrichment Services, which is a private nonprofit organization that provides affordable and impactful sports-based youth development and leadership programming for Boston children and teens. The second building would have included 9 condominium units. Shortly after their approval in 2021, the proponent was involved in litigation with abutters, which resulted in the proposal before you today. The small project change is seeking a reduction in height from 39 to 35 feet for both buildings and a reduction in the number of condominium units from 9 to 7 for the residential building. The notice of project change was submitted on February 15th, 2023. One public meeting was held on March 14th and resulted in support from the community and Councilor Lara's office. The comment period ended on March 17th. At this time, I will turn it over to the development team to go over their presentation in more detail, after which we would be happy to take any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ebony. Hello, my name is Lee Goodman. I'm with Watermark Development. We are the developer of the residential building, and I'm representing as well Youth Enrichment Services, who's doing their headquarters next door. So again, as Ebony said, we were approved in 2021. The Youth Enrichment Services building was 39 feet at the time, and the housing building was 45 feet, and we followed what we thought were the rules of Plan JP Rocks. Unfortunately, it's not codified, so we had to get ZBA variances after the board approval at BPDA, and some abutters challenged the variances. So in order to move forward, we agreed to remove a story of the residential building and essentially compact and shrink down the Yes building by 6 feet. So again, that resulted in a smaller Yes building. It's about 2,000 feet smaller, as well as the removal of a mezzanine storage space, and we lost 2 residential units on the building on the right. Next slide, please. So again, for those who aren't familiar, this is directly across from the JPNDC Brewery in Jamaica Plain. It's you know, half a block from Stony Brook T Station. Next slide. Again, 2 buildings. We didn't change anything on the footprint. Everything is staying exactly the same. There's a center driveway that is a shared easement for both buildings to access the parking. And then the design for youth enrichment service is really centered around a bus drop-off. So there's 2 curb cuts. The buses can enter through the middle and load children through this ski shop we're showing in the middle of their building, and then exit out of the second curb cut on the left. And that's because they run ski trips for kids, you know, 12 weekends a year in the winter. Next slide, please. So again, on the top, you're just kind of looking at the new elevations with the lowered height. And then from the bottom, you're looking at it from the residential building downwards. Next slide, please. Again, for the residential, this is the before and after. So we lost the 2 units on the top floor that were stepped back. So now it's just a 3-story building, 7 units. Next slide, please. And then this is the Youth Enrichment Services building. It's similar. We kind of lost the middle row of windows. That's where a lot of the storage space was in their mezzanine level. They also reduced some area, you know, due to some value engineering affecting the construction costs, which have skyrocketed in the last couple of years. But they're still able to make their program work, and they're still able to have the ski shop and the offices above. So that's good. Next slide, please. And again, just to sum it up again, you know, 45 feet became 39 for the Yes building, 45 feet became 35 feet for the housing building. You know, the rest of the design mostly stayed the same. The footprint didn't change at all, and we are still able to emulate the canopy and the bus drop-off that we had in the previous design. Next slide, please. And these are just renderings from the previous design, but they're going to stay the same. You know, there's still going to be the ski shop. There's still going to be the youth programming and office space on the 2nd floor and 3rd floor. Next slide, please. So yeah, that's really it. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments from the board? So I just have a question on, so what was exactly driving this? So I know we approved it. So I'm sorry if you're having to walk me through this one more time. We approved it, and then what happened?
So, I mean, the basics of it is that in Jamaica Plain, there's an area that has this planned JP Rocks that was approved by the BPDA, and it's a guideline, and folks follow it. But unfortunately, when you have a guideline that isn't codified, you still need zoning relief. And a lot of the neighbors and abutters across the street, they just felt it was too tall. You know, they wanted it to be a shorter building, and some of them maybe didn't know about JP Rocks, or maybe they moved there after it was approved by the BPDA.
So the guideline, though, the guideline would have allowed the original.
Correct. We followed the mapping to, in that section, 45 feet is recommended. So we kind of designed the project around that. But, you know, the litigation was going to stretch on for years, and Youth Enrichment Services had to sell their existing building to pay for the new building, and it just became the path of least resistance, and we moved forward with what we thought was achievable. Sadly.
Yeah. Well, that's unfortunate. That's, yeah. I guess I'm disappointed that you're put into that situation and that pushback, because these are really great buildings, and Youth Enrichment Services is an amazing organization. So I mean, it's so.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I hope that we're the third nonprofit, or we're not a nonprofit, but we're the third project with a nonprofit that had this situation. Pine Street Inn and JPNDC as well got sued. And I would urge you all, or anyone who's listening, to consider codifying the plan, because I think it's going to keep happening. Jamaica Plain at least has a very litigious population, and sometimes they don't care that much about the use. They just don't want anything to get built. So I think codification of this plan would save a lot of drama. So something to consider.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Lansmark?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Congratulations and
Thank
good
you.
job.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Okay. Item number 27. Request adoption of a second amendment to the report and decision amendment on the Mattapan Heights 2 121A project to approve the transfer of a partnership interest in the project to Trinity Financial Asset LLC, an affiliate of Trinity Mattapan Heights Incorporated. John.
Thank you, and good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board, Secretary Polhamus and Director Jemison. My name is John Spillane. I'm an attorney in the Office of General Counsel. Before you today is a request for authorization to adopt a second amendment to the report and decision on the Mattapan Heights 2 121A project, approving the transfer of a partnership interest in the project. Mattapan Heights 2 Chapter 121A project was the second phase of the revitalization of 9.61 acres of the former Boston Specialty and Rehabilitation Hospital campus located in the Mattapan neighborhood of Boston. Involved the redevelopment of several vacant buildings into 83 units of rental housing, 100% of which were affordable to households earning up to 60% of area median income. To provide background, on June 3rd, 2004, the board voted to adopt a report and decision, and through that report and decision, Trinity Mattapan Heights Limited Partnership, further referred to as the partnership, was designated as the Chapter 121A entity to acquire and undertake the project. And on June 14th, 2004, the partnership and the BPDA entered into a regulatory agreement pursuant to Chapter 121A. On December 28th, 2004, the partnership filed an application for an amendment to the report and decision, in which the partnership sought approval from the BPDA for a minor modification of the borders of the land included in the project, which was approved on January 26, 2006, which leads us to today. More recently, on March 15th, 2023, the partnership filed with the BPDA an application titled Application for Approval to Transfer Partnership Interest pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 121A. This application seeks the BPDA's approval to approve the transfer of partnership interest and approve the resulting new ownership structure. The partnership, who is the applicant, requests approval of the transfer of 99.99% limited partnership interest in the partnership to Trinity Financial Asset LLC, an affiliate of Trinity Mattapan Heights, Inc., who is the general partner. The transfer consideration of this partnership interest is $25,000 plus any transaction costs not to exceed $3,000. The proposed second amendment to the report and decision grants the requested approval of the transfer. Incorporated in the amendment are findings and determinations to authorize the partnership's assignment of the limited partner's interest to Trinity Financial Asset LLC in accordance with the Acts of 1960, Chapter 652, Section 13 as amendment. The affordability restrictions will remain in place on this project and remain unchanged and are in effect until the year 2079. The General Counsel of the BPDA has determined that the changes set forth in the application do not collectively constitute a fundamental change in accordance with the Acts of 1960, Chapter 652, Section 13A, as amended, and a public hearing therefore was not required. It is the recommendation of the BPDA staff to approve the 121A application and to adopt it in all respects. I'm happy to answer any further questions you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Landsmark?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
The chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 28, Rosendale. Request authorization to issue certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E, small project review of the zoning code for the construction of 31 residential rental units, including 19 IDP units, 6,800 square feet of retail and community theater space, and 38 bicycle spaces located at 4198 through 4206 Washington Street, to petition the Board of Appeal for the necessary variances and to take all related actions. Caitlin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Secretary Polhemus, Director Jemison, and members of the board. Caitlin Coppinger, Senior Project Manager at Development Review. The project I bring before you tonight is the previously approved 4198 Washington Street project in Rosendale. Arcs Urban received approval in June of 2021 to redevelop the existing site into a 5-story, approximately 35,450 square foot mixed-use building. The approved project will include 31 residential units and approximately 6,800 square feet of retail and community theater space. The previously approved project included an inclusionary development policy commitment of 13 units, or approximately 42% of its total units. On January 27, 2023, the proponents submitted a project update letter to inform the BPDA that they'll be increasing their affordability commitment from 42% to 61%. This change will create a total of 19 affordable housing units on site. With this change, the updated project is exempt from the inclusionary development policy, and it's anticipated this updated project will enter into a MassDOT's affordable housing restriction if awarded public subsidy. If the proponent is not successful in securing additional funding, the updated project will be subject to an IDP and an affordable rental housing agreement and restriction. The RHAR must be executed along with or prior to the issuance of any certificate of completion for the updated project. The BPDA held a public meeting on March 9th, 2023 to inform the community of this update. The vote before you tonight is to solidify the commitment to increased affordability and to ensure that the correct agency monitors the agreement for affordability. I have Benji Bowl and Phil Cohen here tonight to help answer any questions that the board might have.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second?
Call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Landsmark?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Caitlin, so much. Appreciate it.
Cheers. All right, item number 29. Request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E, small project review of the zoning code to construct a 6-story hotel that will include 72 guest rooms and up to 2,300 square feet of retail restaurant space at 330 C Street, and to take all related actions. Stephen.
Good evening, and thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Jameson. My name is Stephen Harvey, and I am a Senior Project Manager at the BPDA. I want to thank you for your time today. The new project proposal I bring to you today is 330 C Street, located in South Boston. On March 15, 2022, the Boston Planning and Development Agency received a small project review application from the proponent. The proponent is proposing to construct a 69-foot, 6-story hotel with ground floor commercial space. The hotel will contain 72 guest rooms, and the ground floor commercial space is proposed to be 2,300 square feet in size. Virtual public meetings for the project were held on April 20th, 2022, November 9th, 2022, and on March 29th, 2023. The meetings were advertised in the local newspaper and posted on the BPDA's webpage, and a notification was emailed to all subscribers of the BPDA South Boston and South Boston Waterfront Neighborhood Update List. The comment period for the project ended on November 18th, 2022. Shortly, I will pass it over to Eileen. Eileen is the planner for South Boston, and she will touch on the area's planning context. Once Eileen completes running through the planning context, Raul DeBorge, and George Moranci will run through the project presentation. Once the presentation is complete, Raul and George will answer any questions put forward by the board. Once again, thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Stephen. Good evening, Chair Rojas, Secretary Polimis, members of the board, and Director Jemison. My name is Eileen Michaud, and I'm the BPDA Neighborhood Planner for South Boston. The proposed project is not located within the boundaries of a recent planning initiative, but it is located within the extent of the forthcoming South Boston Transportation Action Plan, which is co-led by the BPDA and the City of Boston Transportation Department. In reviewing this project, Planning Division staff considered the neighborhood context, the zoning code, and public feedback, especially as this project is within a local industrial subdistrict and serves as a transition zone between the residential fabric of South Boston and more large-scale industrial and institutional uses to the north. Next slide, please. During project review, BPDA staff ensured that the project scale and materiality refers to the existing neighborhood residential fabric, incorporating a full brick material on the facade to complement surrounding buildings. Staff also focused on ensuring a safe pedestrian experience in public realm, which resulted in an increased setback and reduction in the overhead projection of the building on C Street to allow for more space along the sidewalk. Lastly, the provision of new street trees on C Street is a welcome addition to make a largely gray, impervious landscape more comfortable and inviting for pedestrians. Pending board approval, the proposed project will proceed to the Zoning Board of Appeals for approval of the zoning relief. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to George and Raul to present the project in more detail.
Great. Thank you, Stephen and Eileen. Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam Secretary, Director Jemison, and members of the board. Really nice to see you all. For the record, my name is Raul DeBorge, Vice President of Development for Rise Construction and Development. Our 330 C Street project is a joint venture between our team at Rise and City Realty, both of whom are Boston-based development companies. This evening, I'm joined by Josh Fetterman of City Realty and our zoning counsel, George Moranci. On the design of the project, we're working with Group 1 Partners, who is a South Boston-based architectural firm that specializes in hotel developments. Before turning it over to George Moranci to further the presentation, I'd like to take a quick moment to thank Steve Harvey and the rest of the BPDA team, the City Council, President Flynn's office, our partners in organized labor that will be building and operating this hotel, all the community stakeholders, and the local neighborhood group that worked with us to get to this point. With that being said, I'll turn it over to George to quickly run through a brief overview on the project, and we'll be happy to take any questions you may have thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you, Raul. Thank you, Eileen and Stephen. My name is George Moranci. I am the project attorney. Our project architect at Group 1 has another commitment and unfortunately needed to leave a short while ago. I will therefore have to do my best to walk through the urban design presentation, and I beg the board's understanding and indulgence as I try to do that. I will do my best. As Raul said, we wish to thank our project manager, Stephen Harvey, and all BPDA and city staff. Madam Chair, members, Secretary Polimis, Director Jemison, the project site here consists of just over, if we have the next slide, please, I'm sorry. The project site consists of just over 8,200 square feet at the corner of C Street and Cipher Street in South Boston's St. Vincent neighborhood. Next slide, please. It's currently occupied by a single-story commercial building, most recently used for auto repair. The site, as can be seen here, is in a transition zone between the residential St. Vincent neighborhood, including numerous commercial and industrial uses in the immediate vicinity, which are being increasingly redeveloped into new uses, and the area of the South Boston Convention and Exhibition Center and its parking lot, which is seen at the top of this slide. Next slide, please. This is a view of the site. Cipher Street there is shown, and it's at the corner of C Street. Next slide, please. This slide shows existing site conditions depicting an underutilized and not entirely attractive site, which is poised at this time for a productive redevelopment use. As a proposed hotel within 10 minutes driving time by Uber, Lyft, or taxi from both Logan Airport and South Station, the project would eschew on-site parking. The site is also within easy walking distance to West Broadway and MBTA bus routes 9 and 10, providing direct service to the Red Line's Broadway Station and Andrew Station. Moreover, and probably more important, my clients have committed to providing valet parking in area garages for any guests who might elect to bring a car with them to this hotel, which would not be offering on-site parking. Next slide, please. This slide is the project site plan showing the proposed hotel and its ground floor program, which includes a lobby and reception area, an approximately 2,200 square foot restaurant, which is intended mainly as a hotel guest amenity, trash and recycling areas in the rear, along with utility areas, as well as vertical circulation corridors. Working closely with the BPDA, as Eileen mentioned, the design was amended to ensure significant front setbacks to allow for a widened sidewalk on C Street and a more friendly pedestrian environment in front of the hotel for the benefit of both guests and the neighborhood generally. Deliveries and removables, including trash and recycling, would be accomplished by the surface area on the left of the site plan, which provides direct access to and from back of the house operations and an inset curbside area, which would be dedicated to pickups, drop-offs, and service use. Next slide, please. This slide is a typical floor plan with guest rooms, operational and storage areas, and vertical circulation. Next slide, please. These slides show the C Street and Cypher Street elevations, which are essentially, or which would be the visible elevations. The building's design, massing, setbacks, and materials palette all matured during the BPDA and community review process. The facades are organized in a simple structured pattern derived from area residential buildings. The materials chosen are a mix of metal panel colors organized to emphasize and complement the building's massing, but predominantly a change that was made during community process to brick, which was something that was indicated as desirable by the community in order to sort of connect to the older architecture in the neighborhood. The patterning in joints and panel sizes is intended to be clean and organized to emphasize the detailing and to create a subtle and hopefully elegant pattern and rhythm to the building. Next slide, please. This is an additional urban design rendering showing the building from a different perspective, a bird's eye perspective looking down. Next slide, please. This is an additional rendering showing the building from a perspective on C Street. Here we can see that the ground floor lobby and restaurant space are transparent and inviting with floor-to-ceiling glass. Ground floor also, as Eileen mentioned, sets back from the property line, creating a more generous sidewalk with green buffering. The vertical massing steps up along Cypher Street, while the C Street edge here is in line with adjacent structures, strengthening the already existing and further evolving street wall on C Street. Next slide, please. Finally, this rendering shows the small fifth-story open space area for guests, hotel guests only. This was conceived as a small area for sitting, having a cup of coffee, making a cell phone call, or otherwise just enjoying some views of the city from a small area reserved for, again, hotel guests only. I believe that concludes the presentation. At this point, we'll take any questions that any members may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions or comments from the board?
Quick comment. Mr. Morency, if you give up the law practice at any point, you did a very good job bringing us through the architectural slides, so thank you, and what a nice improvement over the existing conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Thank you.
I would just add that this is a pretty gritty industrial area at this moment. and your client might think about adding just a little bit more greenery along the edges there to soften those edges just a little bit. But this is going to end up being, I think, somewhat transformative, assuming that it works the way you want it to work.
Thank you. We agree, Mr. Landsmark. I think it's, for an area that's only a couple of blocks actually from my office, it is that I drive by every day. It is going to be really transformative for the neighborhood. And one thing that wasn't mentioned, and it is important, is that this stands out. This is going to be a union-built and union-staffed project, which is always nice to hear.
Great. Any additional questions or comments? All right, hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Landsmark?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Congratulations. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you. Okay, item number 30, request authorization to issue a certification of approval in accordance with Article 80E, Small Project Review of the Boston Zoning Code for the construction of a 4-story community center containing function rooms, classrooms, offices, and amenity space located at 85 West Newton Street, subject to ongoing design review, to petition the Board of Appeal for the necessary variance, and to take all related actions. Tyler.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board again. The proposal before you is an Article 80 small project at 85 West Newton Street in the South End. The proposed project consists of a new 4-story community arts center building. The 4-story building will contain a multi-purpose arts center with multi-purpose event space, art exhibition space, practice rooms, classrooms, and community rooms. The project is adjacent to O'Day Park and has worked with the Parks Department to design the project with this relationship in mind. Furthermore, the BPDA held 2 public meetings for this project in November of 2021 and January of 2023. These both were well attended and advertised in the newspaper. Now we'll turn it over to Astrid Walker-Stewart from BPDA Planning to discuss the planning context before Peter Muckenbeck and Vanessa Calderon-Rosado from the development team, begin the presentation. Lastly, I want to say thank you to all the members of the public, elected officials, city agencies, and those who helped review the 85 West Newton Street project. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Good evening, Chair Rojas, Secretary Polhemus, Chief Jemison, and members of the board. My name is Astrid Walker-Stewart, and I'm the neighborhood planner for the South End. The proposed project is not located within the boundaries of a recent planning initiative. Instead, Planning Division staff considered the neighborhood context, Imagine Boston 2030, the zoning code, community engagement, and input from other city agencies, notably Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture and the Parks Department. The proposed project is consistent with the City of Boston's citywide goal to bolster the arts community through culturally driven space and improve the public realm and open spaces. Next slide, please. So while the proposed project's design is more modern than its adjacent buildings, the traditional South End row houses, its use of terracotta, compatibility in scale and massing, and circulation path enables the project to complement the streetscape and respect the existing neighborhood context. BPDA planning staff paid particular attention to strengthening the streetscape, public realm, and connectivity with neighboring sites. Through considerable collaboration between the proponent, parks, and the BPDA, an accessible path between the O'Day playground and the project was created through contextually sensitive grade changes, strategic adjustments of a tree planter, and a clear pathway from the multi-purpose room to the park. Additionally, BPDA staff worked with the proponent to increase the sidewalk width and building setback to improve the pedestrian zone and accommodate tree planters and bike parking. Thank you, and I will now turn it over to the development team to present the project in more detail.
Thank you so much. Good evening, and thank you, Madam Chair, members of the BPDA board, and Director Jamieson for giving us the opportunity to speak about EBA's 85 West Newton Street project, or as we call it, EBA's Casa. Tonight, Peter Monkenbeck cannot be here, but I will be presenting or kind of providing the context for the project and turn it over to our architect. But just a little bit of background, IBA, or Inquilinos Boricuas en Acción, is a nationally recognized community development corporation dedicated to empower individuals and families to improve their lives and achieve socioeconomic mobility through high-quality, affordable housing, education, and financial empowerment and resident empowerment, and arts programs. Currently, IBA has 667 units of affordable housing in its portfolio, along with 5 community programs that include early education, youth development, financial empowerment, resident services, and the arts. IBA's new CASA, which stands for Center for the Arts, Self-Determination, and Activism, will be New England's largest Latinx multipurpose center, providing flexible and well-equipped spaces necessary to advancing IBA's mission. The CASA will be a home for the IBA family and residents of the South End to learn, to grow, and to, most of all, perform and gather as a community. As Boston's new home for Latinx arts and community empowerment, the CASA will reinvigorate IBA's arts programs, will also expand IBA's education, social, and economic mobility programs, and lastly, will strengthen IBA's workplace and efficiencies and collaborations between our own programs. The site, as you see here, is close to the homes of the primary beneficiaries of the proposed project, who are the over 1,200 residents of Villa Victoria, which is IBA's affordable housing community in the South End. The majority of IBA's residents earn at or less than $30,000 per year. So the completion of the project will allow IBA to expand and enhance our programming near where our residents live, and everything will be under one hub, under one new CASA. Our CASA is consistent, as it was said earlier, with the city's goal to strengthen the arts community through cultural-driven spaces, as well to improving the open spaces and the public realm, as you will see in a minute with the design. Over the course of the past 18 to 20 months, we have diligently pursued the creation of an inclusive, welcoming, and sustainable design that will provide transparency and that will connect the street and the adjacent playground to a state-of-the-art, LEED certified space in which arts, self-determination, and activism will be strong and alive. During this period of planning and design, we have engaged in 8 community meetings that were sponsored by IBA with our residents and with neighborhood associations in the South End, as well as neighborhood groups. In addition to those meetings, we also participated in the 2 community meetings sponsored by the BPDA, and also 2 additional community meetings sponsored by the South End Landmarks District Commission. We are pleased to say and report to you today that the project overall has received very positive feedback and reception from our residents, from our South End neighbors, as well as local and federal elected officials. Similarly, we have engaged in numerous meetings, as has been said before, with staff from the BPDA, the Landmarks Commission, Parks and Rec, and every city agency or department involved in the development of this type of project. And we have been remained very open and collaborative to all the feedback that we have received and the comments and that have been generated through these conversations and meetings. And I'm actually proud to say that we have incorporated that feedback into the design that you will review tonight. And we're excited about that. Our proposed project for IBA's CASA had received unanimous approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals 2 days ago on April 11th, and we're here in front of you today for your review and hopefully approval. So now I'd like to turn it over to Natasha Spada, who is the principal of Studio NAA Architects, who is the main lead architect for this project, along with Ann Bea from Annam Architects. So, Natasha.
Thank you, Vanessa, and thank you all for having us today. As Vanessa mentioned, this is the South End neighborhood where a lot of, not only IBA, but it is where the project is located, and the Villa Victoria is the neighborhood around that where most of the IBA houses are. And so the next slide, please. And so these are some of the houses, Villa Victoria townhouses and West Newton row houses that are adjacent to the project. And also the other areas of the South End that are also adjacent, including the Blacksmith School and the Villa Victoria high rise. So the next one, please. So this is the current site. It was the site of the old church, as you know, which had structural deficiencies and was torn down a couple of years ago. It is next to the O'Day Park, which is a huge amenity for the community. On the left-hand side of West Newton Street are the 4-story row houses, and then in the center of the block are the townhouses for Villa Victoria as well. In the next slide. So the site is located on near Tremont Street and West Newton Street, and between West Newton Street and Aguadilla Street, as you can see up on the upper left. And so the first view A is looking from Tremont Street towards West Newton Street, towards the site. As you get closer to it in B, it is right after the pedicab building, and so that is the open site at this moment. The view from C is looking from Aguadilla Street towards in the park, and on the right-hand side is the site. Across from it are the townhouses, and then D is looking down from West Newton Street towards Tremont, from the park, basically on the sidewalk, looking towards what will be the building between the street and the townhouses. So the next slide, please. So this is the site plan. Again, we're very lucky to be next to the O'Day Playground and have been collaborating with the Parks Department, as well as the BPDA. And so the Villa Victoria housing is on the north side. West Newton Street is on the south side of this plan. And so the dotted line that is white is the remnants of the foundation of the old church. And so then the way that we've located the multi-purpose room is in the center of the block as a 2-story space, which is the lighter colored red. And then around it is the L shape is the 4-story, which are the offices for resident services and for the rest of IBA. We're right off of West Newton Street is the entrance to the building, and there's a setback from the park, but there's a connection to the park that you will see in a second. So this is a section through West Newton Street towards the Villa Victoria housing, which are the smaller townhouses. So again, we have a building that is 4 stories with the elevation of 53.2. The houses across the way are 50 feet. And then we have a roof screen that gets us up to 59.6. On the interior is the multi-purpose room, which is a 2-story that is more in proportion with the Villa Victoria housing. And the next slide, please, is the proposed facade. So we've been working closely not only with BPDA, SCLDC, and others in the community. And we have a terracotta building, terracotta and glass with gray metal for the cornice and for the roof. And then we have also brick, and you'll see it when we show you the different views. There's a brick that goes around the building as well, and then we have a glazed entry that is welcoming for the community with glazing. Full glazing on the park side. And so the next slide will show the view as you're coming from West Newton Street, looking at the sign of Inquilinos Boricuas en Acción leading you to the front door. We have also used, beyond these materials, we have also used at the base of the building, as you see next to where it says 85, is the granite that is occurring throughout most of the row houses in the neighborhood, and also marking the entrance as you're walking by. The next view is a view from the park, and this is the tree that was discussed with the planter. That this is, as the park is developing, we're looking for all the opportunities for the multi-purpose room to look out into the park, but also to become a community amenity, to have these sliding doors that open up into the park and become engages the park for other activities that are happening outside. Here you can see the brick on the interior part of the site that we're proposing, and we also see the terracotta that is also contextual in color and in kind of and in feel to the row houses that are happening on the other side of West Newton Street. And I think this is the last slide. I think, Tyler, this is the slide that you had presented at the beginning of the presentation. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Great presentation. Do we have any questions or comments from the board? Okay, just as a comment, I think this is an amazing resource for our community. I love that it is a resource center that is right next to the people who could benefit from those resources. So very excited to see what you do with the new Iba Casa. So with that, I believe a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Lansmart?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Congratulations and good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Good evening.
Thank you very much.
Okay, cool. Item number, let's go, 31. Request reauthorization to adopt a demonstration project plan in connection with the 595 Albany Street project. Adopt an order of taking for certain air rights above 595 Albany Street project. Execute a deed conveying the taking area to LPB Albany LLC. Authorize a co-petition to the City of Boston Public Improvement Commission to discontinue certain rights of the public above 595 Albany Street, and to enter into and execute a deed and any and all related instruments, agreements, and documents in connection with the order of taking. Tyler.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. The proposal before you is a reauthorization for order of taking and Public Improvement Commission petition for 595 Albany Street. This is an identical action to the memorandum that was presented and approved at February 16th BPDA board meeting. The previous board vote and corresponding authority to proceed with the taking pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 79, must be recorded within 30 days of board authorization. There was a delay and the authorization was not properly recorded within the timeline required by statute. We seek reauthorization so we may properly record within the prescribed timeline. Thank you.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board? Hearing and seeing none, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Lansmart?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 32, request authorization to enter into a grant agreement with the University of Massachusetts, Boston's Department of Urban Planning to disperse $100,000 in support of the 2023 summer program expanding Boston's pipeline for youth of color and urban planning. Nisha.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Director Jemison, Secretary Paul Hemus, and esteemed members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you this evening. My name is Nisha McDonald. I recently moved into the role of Community Engagement Manager for the BPDA. While America's metropolitan areas have become increasingly diverse in terms of race, ethnicity, religion, and class, the urban planning, design, and development professions have failed to attract young people of color into their ranks. Today, only 2% of licensed architects and roughly 6% of practicing planners are African Americans. With that in mind, in November 2021, the BPDA invited Boston's graduate architecture and planning schools and allied professional associations to work with BPDA staff in the Boston Public Schools to develop a program designed to introduce local high school students from underserved communities to the growing number of exciting intellectual, educational, professional, and public service opportunities available within the ever-expanding urban planning, design, and development professions of our region. This collaborative effort represented a long-term commitment by Boston's urban planning, design, and development communities to address this issue through the implementation of an ambitious, multi-pronged diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative focused on youth of color who live, work, and study in Boston's most economically distressed neighborhoods. As a part of this approach, in May 2022, the BPDA granted the UMass Boston a grant of $57,500 to execute the 2022 summer program in resiliency planning. This 4-week program introduced 15 local high school students to the principles and practice of contemporary urban planning through hands-on engagement in a community-based research project focused on extreme heat threats related to climate change. The Cool Roxbury, Lower Roxbury's Extreme Heat Challenges and Opportunities report was the final product of this newly launched summer program. The BPS High School and UMass Boston students and faculty who collaborated in the production of the study were recently recognized by the 2022 Best Student Project Award by the Massachusetts chapter of the American Planning Association. Positive feedback on the students' report from Boston City Council members and BPDA staff, as well as extremely positive student evaluations of this new pipeline initiative, prompted us to develop the below proposal for significantly expanding this important pre-professional educational program. UMass Boston proposed a 3-pronged approach to expand and advance the overall mission of the Boston Pipeline Project in 2023. Part 1 of this approach will grant students who took part in the 2022 summer program in resiliency planning, known as Cohort 1, the opportunity to enroll in an after-school enrichment program during the spring term of the 2022-2023 academic year, to further enhance their urban planning knowledge and skills while reinforcing their interest in post-secondary education. In partnership with the Mel King Urban High School Fellows Program, also known as Social Justice in the City Club, graduate students and faculty from UMass Boston's Department of Urban Planning and Community Development will bring together the 15 Cohort 1 students for biweekly sessions to engage in the following types of learning activities. This includes guided tours of urban planning related historic sites, walking tours of historic neighborhoods, new neighborhoods, and proposed development areas, guest speakers, and a capstone activity. Part 2 of the approach will allow those Cohort 1 students the additional opportunity to further develop their urban design skills while gaining important work experience in a professional planning organization by participating in the newly developed Urban Planning Summer School 2.0 during the summer of 2023. For 4 weeks in July, students will get the opportunity to work with local stakeholders and the City of Boston Parks and Recreation Department to redesign one of Lower Roxbury's most health, life-threatening urban heat islands. These publicly owned open spaces have been targeted for action based on the field-based research activities that these students carried out during the 2022 summer program in urban and resiliency planning. Part 3 of the approach will be expanding the reach of this pipeline by inviting a new group of local high school students, known as Cohort 2, from the 4 partner schools, Madison Park, Dearborn STEM Academy, Boston Tech, and Blue Hills Regional Vocational School. This new group of approximately 20 students will have the opportunity to participate in an enhanced immersion 4-week summer program similar to the one UMass Boston and its educational partners offered last year to Cohort 1 students. An aspect of the aforementioned after-school enrichment program from Part 1 of this approach will have the Cohort 1 students survey their fellow students in their respective schools to identify the most serious quality of life issues facing their families. Based upon the results of this survey, the UMass Boston planning faculty and students will develop the content for an exciting new 4-week immersion program. Among the issues that have been mentioned as potential foci for the 2023 summer program are affordable housing, urban transportation, public education, income wealth disparities, indoor air quality temperatures, daycare, food security, and primary health care access. Over time, the curriculum materials developed for this element of the program will constitute a comprehensive introduction to the principles and practice of contemporary urban planning that can be made available to interested secondary high school educators throughout the US and internationally via the internet. With that, staff recommends the BPDA disperse a grant to UMass Boston in the maximum amount of $100,000 to provide financial support for the administration of the 2023 Boston Pipeline project. Thank you all again. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
Just a comment. I think that this is a terrific start, and I'm delighted to see that it's moving into a second year. I would hope that given that Boston, Greater Boston, has a larger concentration of design and planning schools than any other city that I know of in the world, I would hope that this would serve as the start for collaborative activity that could involve really all of the schools and nonprofits across the area, including the BAC and the architecture program at Mass Art, programs at Northeastern and Wentworth, and then some of the programs that have been developed by some of the more private sector entities, such as the Urban Land Institute, that have sought to connect and develop strategies for bringing more of our urban youth into this field. And I would also hope that there would be some tracking systems that could be put in place to see what happens to the graduates of these programs over time. My recollection is that when the Big Dig was being done, the federal government spent or allocated millions of dollars for similar training programs around educating Boston youth on the design and construction aspects of the Big Dig. That was a long time ago, and I don't think we know whatever happened to those young people. Did they enter the field or not? And I think that if we have programming that expands the number of stakeholders who are committed to doing this work, and looks at the work longitudinally, we will have a clearer sense 5 or 10 years from now of how these investments, in fact, have changed the nature of the field. My personal disappointment is that I've been involved in these kinds of programs for a long time, and we don't know what happened, except that the design and construction fields remain as isolated from our communities today as they were 25 years ago. So my hope is that this is the start of a larger endeavor, and that in future years we'll be prepared to make an even more significant commitment, particularly as it relates to the creation of green jobs and the fulfillment of Mayor Wu's commitment to bringing more of our city young people into these fields.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Landsmark. Absolutely, really appreciate those thoughts and comments. And since you had mentioned some of those previously, there has been some significant progress in those areas of collaborating, thinking it through tracking and accountability, as well as more sustainable funding. The UMass Boston faculty leading this effort has been in contact with some of the folks that you mentioned, including Northeastern, BAC, and ULI, speaking to collaborating and consolidating this work. They have also been in contact with Evolution Institute, an international NGO with extensive experience conducting these participatory formative evaluations of school-based workforce development. And in terms of funding, they have been in contact with a few different foundations, as well as Mrs. Zoe Davis of the City of Boston's Climate Change Resiliency Team to speak to more sustainable funding for their summer resilience planning, but also some of the foundations that have reached out to UMass Boston to express interest in more sustainable funding solutions have included the Barr Foundation, the Boston Foundation, and the Hyams Foundation as well. So to your points exactly, I think we all hope that this is the start of a more scalable approach.
Great, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, very exciting. And anything we can do to kind of really kind of incubate this new model. We're in a perfect ecosystem to do that. We can hope to demonstrate it that, other planning and development agencies like around the state, around the country can replicate. But yeah, super excited. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing and seeing none, motion is in order.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Mr. Landsberg?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Thanks, Nisha.
Thank you all.
Okay, so item number 33, we have no personnel items. So we'll go to 34, contractual. I need a motion to pay the bills.
So moved. Second.
Roll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Dr. Landsberg?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Motion passes. Please pay the bills. And finally, 35, item number 35, director's update. Director Jemison, the floor is yours.
Good evening, and great to see you, board members, as always. Just to provide a few notes to summarize tonight, I wanted to sort of say we had 4 new development projects on the agenda with 47 new residential units, 29 of which are income restricted, represents about $125 million worth of investment in the city. So we're pleased to see that investment. I wanted to talk a little bit about what some of the key things that thematically that happened tonight. Before I did that, I wanted to say add 2 sort of personal notes. This week, we celebrated the work and impact of Mel King. Not only was he a former candidate for mayor, whose candidacy, along with later Mayor Flynn, really changed the way that we talk about politics in Boston in a very constructive way. I think it also needs to be recognized the role he had in really innovating the use of affordable housing resources and the desire he showed through his work for us to create mixed income, multiracial communities in the form that we frankly take for granted today. I had a chance to meet and work with Mel a little bit as a very young person, and his example was profound not just in terms of representation, but in terms of knowledge and advancement of the field. As I go on to the next item, I just want to highlight that I think we take for granted in the policies that we make and in the work that we do that that people live together, they can live together in mixed income neighborhoods and developments. This wasn't necessarily an idea that we all expected to approve in every board meeting of this board without and before Mel and his voice was lent to this work. So I want to make sure that I highlight that his passing to this board, which I'm sure he came to address or strategized around many times. But I wanted to acknowledge his passing today in today's board meeting. Another note I wanted to pass on was just Lawrence E. Brophy was a longtime staff member of this agency and recently passed after 20 years as a senior planner here. He was the father-in-law of our former general counsel, Eileen Brophy. Our thoughts and prayers with him and his family at this difficult time, as they are with Mel and his. So turning now to some of the business of this evening, I think we had some profound movement on real estate RFPs tonight. We made significant strides in terms of investing in public land for public good, approving 3 RFPs in Charlestown. An RFP will go out in the coming weeks to redevelop the Austin Street lots into affordable housing, open space, and space for artists. In Chinatown, an RFP is going to go out to redevelop parcel 12C, otherwise known as 290 Tremont Street, into affordable housing. Both these sites were identified as high priority opportunity sites in the community planning process in last year's land audit. So we're proud to be able to start the process of redeveloping them today. In addition, in partnership with MOH, Mayor's Office of Housing, RFP is going to go out in the coming weeks to develop 21 to 29 Fernborough, also known as the Fernborough parcels. 3 of these parcels are BPDA owned, the other 2 are owned by MOH. This joint disposition is an example of the work made possible through our fair market acquisition of private property, one of the powers that the agency has and will retain in the future as a critical part of how we do work. Finally, at Columbia Road, we're tentatively designating Civico and Dream Collaborative to redevelop land at 555 Columbia Road. In addition to having a new public library in it, it's got to have office space and a blend of homeownership options. This is completely consistent with the Upham's Corner Arts and Innovation District plans. I want to thank the community who's been a great partner in developing each of these RFPs, and thank the agency's real estate team and staff, led by Rebecca Hansen, that have worked tirelessly to make sure these dispositions take place and to bring much needed housing and other public uses. Today's board meeting sort of featured a large amount of their work, and I thought it was appropriate to highlight that. I also wanted to highlight to the board that they took action on linkage recently, which was recently passed just yesterday, passed by the Zoning Commission. The increase in the fees will be phased in over 2 years, beginning next year. I want to thank staff for their hard work on this, partners in the business community, for those who advocated. Hopefully there's a sense of accomplishment in the milestone of having them increased. For those who are concerned about uncertainty in the market, hoping that the 2-phase implementation speaks to those concerns, which we all share. This work is going to be important to improving conditions, both on the workforce side and the development side, affordable housing-wise, for all parts of the city. Just a few last comments. We approved a contract today for Resilient Fort Point. It's going to take us one step closer to protecting Fort Point Channel and surrounding neighborhoods. Once designed, the construction of the project will come back to the board for your approval, so you'll have a chance to hear about it and ask questions. We're excited to continue to take these steps. Also today, you acted to advance Fenway zoning. I want to highlight those amendments that were approved tonight. These changes prioritize increasing allowed height for those PDAs along Brookline Avenue. These zoning changes are going to enable large-scale development in the area, and also through enabling it, that development, allow us to have the kind of negotiation that's appropriate and the mitigation that's appropriate for the 2 developments to take shape. I think you heard extensively from our counselor for the district, Councilor Bach, who spent enormous time with me and members of the agency working on this zoning, along with other potential developments. Councilor Bach will be missed for her influence in the council, experience and wisdom, but we get the benefit of her experience and wisdom as a new leader, as administrator at the Housing Authority. These actions taken today on zoning will need to be approved by the Zoning Commission. I want to thank the staff for their hard work, and we're excited about the developments that could be enabled by this work. Last but not least, especially starting with the impact of Mel King, ending the meeting with action to expand and enhance our engagement with Boston youth and get them involved in the great work we're doing here, urban planning and development, it's very exciting to make that investment again. And so we're really pleased that we could do it. We appreciate this board and this board's advocacy in this area, in particular Dr. Landsmark and each of the other board members who've been behind all of our efforts of this kind, not only today, but in other board meetings that we have. And in that spirit, I'd like to pass it back to you, Chair Rojas, and say thanks for you and the board's continued hard work with us, making these important decisions that help the city grow. Oh, I think I have one other piece of information I would like to share, if it's okay, Chair Rojas. I was able to support the Office of Chief Financial Officer in briefings to the bond rating agencies as they evaluated the city's credit, and we were told at the budget reveal yesterday that we're maintaining our AAA rating. The work that's done in this body is extremely connected to the strength of the Boston market, and so I think it's important from time to time for for me to highlight that and recognize decisions you make as being key to maintaining the positive business profile of the city and candidly our revenues.
Awesome, great news. I hadn't read that memo yet, so appreciate that. Okay, so great meeting, everyone. I need a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
We'll call for a vote. Mr. Monahan?
Aye.
Lindbergh?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion passes. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next month. Bye-bye.
Good night.